Rep. Anna Paulina Luna has a shocking tweet. A whistleblower, an FBI informant, has come forward to the FBI with evidence of Biden family corruption. And they're so worried that, wait, I'm sorry, what's this? We've got breaking news. Aliens are real. We actually, this is no joke. A whistleblower has come forward, a very reputable source, saying non-human spacecrafts are real and we have them. Wow. Ladies and gentlemen, we're not going to talk about the Biden family at all because this news is so much more important and appealing to the general public. So I'm really excited to get into this alien stuff. And in all seriousness, both of these stories happened today. And you have to wonder why it is. There's a very, very credible source coming out saying non-human aircraft or spacecraft or whatever are in the possession and being withheld from Congress. Ooh. Yeah, because maybe we have the House Oversight Committee saying, having the FBI warning that if the identity of the whistleblower, of the informant, is revealed, he will be killed because of the evidence of corruption that he has brought forward against the Biden family. A major bribery scandal, which we're now learning involves shell companies. So, in all honesty, we'll probably talk about the alien thing, but we're not going to be distracted over what's really happening in this country with another nonsense story that pops up every single time they need a distraction. Because right now, regular people are probably watching live streams about the aliens and not about the Biden family corruption. But we're very serious people here. I mean, we're a little serious, so we'll take the serious news. But there's a lot more news. It's crazy how much news there is. Pride Month is over already. A bunch of corporations have already removed their Pride flag logos because people complained. So, hey, major culture war victory. The stocks for some of these big companies like Target, Bud Light, Kohl's, etc., they're going down. And CNN is trying to lie, saying, no, it's all because of market factors, despite the fact that Walmart is going up. So we're going to get into all of this and a lot more, to be completely honest. We've got Ireland slaughtering 200,000 cows, Elon Musk roasting them over it, potential lawsuits arising over these woke companies. Before we get into all that, my friends, head over to castbrew.com. Click the link in the description below and purchase our Cast Brew coffee. It is our coffee brand. We're sponsoring ourselves. Support companies that don't hate you and that believe in American values, meritocracy, individuality, liberty. That's why we launched castbrew.com, where you can pick up very delicious coffee. I suggest the Rise with Roberto Jr. breakfast blend, or of course, you can always join the Cast Brew Coffee Club, where you get 3 bags per month at a discounted rate. And we also have Appalachian Nights, Colombian French Roast. The proceeds to this are going towards the coffee shop that we are building so we can have physical locations around the country. Once we get the first shop up and running, we want to franchise and then have a bunch of cultural hubs all over the place where people can hang out and share ideas. So castbrew.com, but don't forget, head over to timcast.com, click that join us button to become a member and support our work directly. And you will get access to uncensored members only segments from this show where you can even call in and ask questions. We're going to have one of those tonight. We do it Monday through Thursday at about 10 p.m. They go up on the front page of timcast.com. So don't miss it. Join us today. Joining us today to talk about all of this and more is Clint Russell.
Hello. Clint Russell, host of Liberty Lockdown, co-host of Tower Gang, Mises Caucus member, LP National booster, Dave Smith protege. You know, the thing.
Right. Yes, brother? Absolutely. Well, thanks for hanging out.
Thank you, man. Yeah. And I am joined with Miss Hannah Claire.
Hi, I'm Hannah Claire Brimlow. I'm a writer at Timcast.com. I'm a writer at Timcast.com, full of a stutter today. So happy to be here with you, and I'm here with Brett.
Hello, my name is Brett Dasovic. I am here because, well, you said aliens. Ian's not here. It's possible he's gotten beamed back up to the mothership.
No, he is the whistleblower.
Sure. He's the whistleblower who revealed all the information. So he's in giving a debrief right now, most likely.
There's 2 whistleblowers. There's the Biden one, as the alien one. You pick which one Ian is.
We will never know. But yes, my name is Brett Dasovic. I am the host of Pop Culture Crisis right here on YouTube.com. We have special guest Aiden Mattis with us all week. Go check out the channel there. We have a lot of fun over there.
And I'm Serge.com, as always. Let's get right to it.
And don't forget to smash the like button, subscribe to the channel, share the show with your friends. Smash, smash. Let's read this tweet. We have the story from Rep. Anna Paulina Luna. This tweet's got 1.3 million hits, thousands of retweets. She says, just left meeting for House Oversight. The FBI is afraid their informant will be killed if unmasked, based on the info he has brought forward about the Biden family. We're all very confused by this story because we thought the FBI worked for the neoliberal establishment and the neocons. So
Do they not?
I guess some of them don't.
Fascinating.
Fascinating.
I've had on Kyle Seraphin and Steve Friend, two of the FBI whistleblowers. I know you've had Kyle as well. Maybe you've even had Steve. I'm not sure. But this story is totally mystifying to me because I honestly thought that the FBI was the hit squad for America. So the fact that they're concerned about their whistleblower being taken out, I'm like, does that mean
FBI?
CIA? Does that CIA?
Or the Clinton Foundation?
Yeah, CIA. Well, let's read the news. So this is the story we have from today. Comer says, FBI says Biden bribery probe ongoing and involves shell companies. House Oversight Committee Chairman James Comer said Monday that an FBI informant file accusing Biden of a $5 million bribery scheme while he was vice president involves shell companies, and that FBI officials told him it's part of an active investigation. Comer reviewed the informant file, which he said came from a highly credible informant, in person at the Capitol, and told reporters afterwards that he will move to hold FBI Director Christopher Wray in contempt for not handing over a physical copy to the panel. The claims made in the document are consistent with what we found and disclosed to you all in Romania. It suggests a pattern of bribery where payments would be made through shell accounts and multiple banks. There's a term for that. It's called money laundering. So we feel that this accusation is consistent with a pattern that we're seeing, frankly, in other countries. Comer said that FBI officials confirmed that the unclassified FBI-generated record has not been disproven and is currently being used in an ongoing investigation. A source familiar with the review told the Post that names were redacted from the file the FBI brought to the Capitol except for the Bidens. Now, you know what I find absolutely fascinating about this? The story, it's really quite meaningless because the corruption of the Biden family is overt. He actually is on camera saying, gloating, that he went to Ukraine and said, if you don't fire the prosecutor, I will illegally withhold loan guarantees that were approved by Congress, which I have no authority to do. So he just says he's doing it. Then we have Tony Bobulinski coming out being like, yeah, they're taking bribes and 10% for the big guy and all that. And everyone's just like, oh, wow. And now this story comes out. Am I supposed to be shocked?
I would hope not. I mean, you cover the news every day, so you certainly know what's going down. I think that the interesting
maybe
question...
the aliens were more important.
I think it's just the Republicans ganging up on Biden. He's such a nice guy. How could they do this to him?
He's just a sweet old man.
And it is kind of like, this stuff comes out all the time. And I'm just like, nothing's going to happen. Nothing changes. Like 10% for the big guy was how long ago now? Like nothing changes. I remember the first time that I shared with somebody the thing of him, talking about overt corruption in Ukraine. And they're just like, well, that's, RT. It doesn't matter. It doesn't count. I'm like, doesn't count. It doesn't matter. It doesn't matter where you're seeing the information unless you're telling me that the actual words he's saying are being faked somehow. You should be taking what he says as the important part of it, not where you got the information.
Well, what drives me crazy is that you have Victoria Nuland caught on camera, or on mic, I guess you could say. It was a phone call between her and Jeffrey Pyatt. And you have that plus Biden bragging about withholding $1 billion worth of aid. You have all of these whistleblowers that have come out about different things that transpired in Ukraine in the lead up to Russia's invasion. And yet if you bring it up, it's apologia for Putin somehow. It's like, that's so nonsensical. Like the groundwork was being laid for that conflict for years. And it's infuriating that to just mention it automatically means that I support Russia's invasion. It's like, no, I'm just trying to have a full spectrum analysis of what's transpired.
I have a theory. What if the Biden corruption story is the distraction from the alien story? Like the alien story comes out and they're like, oh, cat's out of the bag. Quick, say Biden's corrupt.
This is like the third time that aliens have been a distraction. I swear.
Right.
Like Joe Rogan had something in 2020, right when Quid Pro Quo came out. Then suddenly aliens were real again. Like it happens every 6 months now.
I am actually in the camp that I believe that there is some fire to this smoke with the aliens. Like we've been following this. I mean, if you're in the conspiracy theory realm at all, you've been following this your entire life. So the fact that they're now kind of like dribbling out more and more factual evidence to support that thesis, I tend to think that there's probably something there, but at the same time, the timing,
Every time.
Yeah.
Every time something happens.
I'm telling you, we just need to hold out. If we stay focused on the Bidens long enough, they'll conform all kinds of things, like the JFK thing, like who was behind that? I'm just saying, if we can stay focused, they'll cave and give us their secrets.
What I want to know
They're
is
throwing out all of the, they're declassifying everything in an effort to hold back Joe Biden. They're like, oh no, Gulf of Tonkin, JFK was assassinated.
Yeah.
Aliens are real.
Anything. It's like in Mario Kart when you have those shells and you like fire them to like throw your friends' cars off course. Like they're just releasing them to try and get us to stop chasing this. And I think that tells you two things. If you stay focused, you'll get a lot of other secrets. And also, this is something they're very scared of you talking about.
If Biden screws up enough, I'll be able to find out if there actually is an X-Files division at the FBI, and that's what I'm excited about.
I'm telling you, just stay focused.
The reality is these people are probably in the scheme. And the reason why they're worried about it getting out is because they are the criminals. That's it. Biden can't do this alone. Someone's got to cover for him. Someone's got to... Look, if Joe Biden is engaging in business activities, of course that's going to hit the intelligence agencies. They're going to see these activities. So someone has to be going in and sweeping things up.
Well, I think that's definitely true. And I think that the Epstein case kind of demonstrated that as well, where, once you start to see these patterns of cover-ups that don't seem to make a lot of sense. But when you realize this is probably to build compromise on American officials, you're like, oh, no, I understand why you guys are covering up for them, because this is all part and parcel of the same operation. I mean, the Biden family, it's weird to think that the Biden family, amongst all of the corrupt American families, is now starting to surpass many of them, at least in my eyes, as far as being the most corrupt. And if their corruption, the attempt to cover up their corruption, leads to World War III, well, then they go down as the worst family in American history.
Do you think they're the most corrupt, or do you think they're the worst at hiding it at this point?
That's a good question, actually, because I think there's a distinct possibility they're not the most corrupt, but they are the most inept at their corruption. Yeah.
Hillary Clinton could be giving them lessons if they were actually paying attention. Hillary Clinton would be.
Yeah, that's true.
She was good at it.
Yeah.
Remember when, if you came out and said that the country was being run by powerful pedophiles in the private sector and in government, they said you were a conspiracy theorist.
Oh, yeah.
And then they were like, you're crazy, you're a lunatic, you're a crackpot, far-right conspiracy theorist, and then Epstein, and then Maxwell. And Maxwell got convicted and is in jail.
And Epstein now they're committed suicide.
And they have a client list of all of these high-profile heads of state and government who were flying around with this guy. It's just
but no one else has been prosecuted. They're just
no. It's just when this story first comes out and people are like, hey, I kind of think that there's powerful child abusers in government and the private sector. They're like, you're crazy. You can't say that. And then you'd go out and regular people would be like, oh, you're insane. That's not true. Until it was true.
Yeah.
Now they're like. At least they're not lizard people. They're not lizard people, though. Yes, they're crazy, powerful pedophiles in business and in government, but they're not lizard people.
Yeah. Just come to our all-ages drag show and forget about these things.
The next story that's going to drop, actually, there are lizard people. Remember we were talking about aliens? They're lizards.
My opinion is the whole Q psyop was to basically poison the well on people that were actually hot on the trail of the truth, that there was sex trafficking of children that was happening at the highest levels of power. But then they paired it with a bunch of lunacy about how Donald Trump was the savior of the universe and we all just had to trust the plan. And it's like, oh, well, that part happened to not be correct, unfortunately.
That once you start getting close to something, they try and veer you off course.
Exactly.
With aliens.
I'm telling you, it's the Mario Kart shell things. They're just lobbing them backwards, trying to blow you up.
People fall for it.
Yeah.
I wonder how many people are more interested in the aliens than this. Because I think the thing about the aliens is that it has a profound impact on faith and reality. And whereas Biden being corrupt is we know.
Right.
You know what I mean?
And I think it feels non-political. People who don't want to talk about politics will talk about aliens.
Yep.
It's harder for people to talk about corruptions because then you have to weigh into well, your side did this. Should we do that?
I mean, simply put, the Joe Rogan podcast will now be leading with aliens and not Biden, corruption, FBI. I mean, look, the story about the FBI saying if our informant is unmasked, they'll be killed. That's a salacious, hot political story. You've got House of Cards vibes. Ooh, who could this guy be? And there's a deep throat in a parking garage giving documents to somebody. And then aliens. And now you've got, a Joe Rogan style podcast and a whole bunch of them where they would normally be like, ooh, spy thriller story. What's that? Aliens are real? Let's roll.
Yeah.
But it does make me wonder if the FBI isn't trying to rebuild some of its, reputation back, if it still has a reputation to rebuild upon. The fact that they're going after Biden after they've been so obviously biased in prosecuting and persecuting Donald Trump, whereas they have overlooked so much of what Joe Biden's done. like maybe this is their attempt to get back in the good graces and not be defunded. I'm not sure.
Don't they want to get him out of office anyways? Hasn't that always been kind of the plan to a lot of people, is that they didn't expect him to serve a full term?
Well, exactly.
anyways?
It's serving up a goat.
Yeah. They thought it would be the age thing, and now they're like, we'll just hammer you out.
He's
It's
just
like
hanging
corruption.
on. We can't get rid of him. We're just going to have to come up with something else.
Which tells you how, like, if this were true, it tells you how incredibly unstable their whole situation is.
I still can't fathom the fact that Joe Biden is considered like the favorite for them. And like how is that even possible? This guy wasn't popular ever in my life. He was always a
He wasn't popular
stock.
when he ran for president and won.
I know, exactly.
Did you see James Vanderbeek?
Yep.
I know you saw this,
Yeah.
Brett.
Yeah, we
where
talked about it.
he's filming himself being like, "You say there can be no debate. The man is 80," and then everyone immediately took it to be that he's saying there should be a Republican. No, he's just saying what we all know. No Joe Biden. I don't look. Get RFK. They won't stand for RFK.
No, they keep referring to him as like a fringe candidate. He's a long shot. There's no way.
I think he's polling a number 2.
Yeah,
Yeah.
he is.
Well, that's
He's
what
doing-
Vanderbeek is pointing out. He's like,
Right.
look, there's people that are polling high enough that at least make it a question that you have to ask. And if you're saying that debates can't happen, if James Vanderbeek, who is really just a Hollywood, he's a classical liberal I think he moved out of Hollywood
in
anyways. I think he
Texas
moved to
now, I
Texas,
think.
right? But
He and his like 6 kids. I'm telling you, that guy's a conservative.
he's pulling like a trolley of children behind him as he's talking about politics, looking absolutely insane. It's awesome. But it's like he's asking valid questions. Look, there's people polling at respectable numbers. This is not a done deal. The guy's falling while walking downstairs. He's falling over sandbags. He's falling over just about everything that aren't his own feet, and even maybe that. Maybe we should have the debates and see if he can form 2 coherent sentences, and they should drug test them. They should absolutely drug test them.
Yeah. Also, I still want an explanation as to why he wore a baseball cap at the Air Force graduation. That has been bothering me since I saw that video.
I thought it was like an Air Force hat, though. Like, I thought it was something.
Has any
for the
other
event.
president done that? Seems so weirdly casual. But I digress.
I got to say, RFK Jr. did a Spaces today, and I heard a good chunk of it. And it's bizarre to me that, like I was just saying, Biden has never been popular in this country, like literally never. And he's still not, for the record, even though he's the president. He's like, I don't know, 25% approval rating or something like that. You listen to RFK talk, and I know everyone gives him a hard time about his speech impediment or whatever you want to call it. The guy is far and away, from a libertarian perspective, far and away the greatest Democrat that I've ever seen or heard speak in my lifetime. Mm-hmm. He is phenomenal. His focus on defunding, abolishing, reforming, whatever, scattering it to the wind, as his uncle once said, the FBI and the CIA, that is extraordinarily high on the priority list for libertarians. On top of that, he seems to have a better grasp. I mean, I saw someone tweet out today, when you hear him speak about the war in Ukraine, it could have been written by Scott Horton or Dave Smith or any of the libertarian anti-war advocates. It's phenomenal. His depth of understanding is amazing. Even though his son went over there and fought, he still seems to have a really good grasp on it. He seems to put as a very high priority to avoid World War III, avoid nuclear war, which ought to be, particularly from the Democrat Party, which is allegedly anti-war, which it no longer is. He is like reconfiguring and realigning the Democrat Party in real time. And I am both filled with gratitude and absolutely horrified that he joins his lineage in their legacy of how the FBI has addressed his family. So, man, he's an interesting character.
Yeah, he really is. I think he's going to reclaim a lot of moderate to left-leaning voters who feel disenfranchised with the modern progressive Democratic Party and feel like they have some values that align with it, but don't feel like they're represented overall. I mean, he is really what they need, even though they hate him and don't want him. And that really mirrors to me what happened with Trump. I mean, in a lot of ways, Trump was extremely patriotic. He breathed life into the Republican Party in a way that it just didn't have before. And the party hates him for it.
Right. I wanted to actually make this point too. I think that in the main election, you would have RFK Jr. and DeSantis would probably be the best candidates because I think they have the most broad-based bipartisan appeal. But because of the way the primaries work, it's almost certainly going to be Trump versus Biden. And it's like, that's once again kind of shows the flaw in our
disagree on the DeSantis point.
Oh, you do?
Yeah, his charisma is like, on a scale of 1 to 10, it's a 13.
Oh, I grant you that, but I think that he's
not going to be able to rally anybody.
He has more appeal from the people that want to go back to a more boring political atmosphere.
Sure, but what I'm saying is those people are politicos. They're political junkies. True. Many of them are conservative. There are many independents. But when I talk to regular people, they don't know who he is.
Oh,
they know very little. So they say things like, oh yeah, he'd probably be better or something like that. Or, oh, I don't know, I just don't like Trump. Things like that. They're going to DeSantis will have to go out and be more than just a governor. He's going to have to go on stage and speak to people who don't know him. And he's not that good at it.
Yeah.
And
I grant you that. And I think
Trump's hilarious.
He's incredible. He's like probably the funniest politician in my lifetime. But I think I'm probably biased because I migrated from California to Florida to live under DeSantis. So it's like I probably perceive him as being a more legitimate threat than he is. Based off the polls, he doesn't appear to be a threat at all to Trump, which is honestly quite surprising to me.
I mean, the only reason anybody's criticizing him is because he's the only threat to Trump in the primaries.
True.
No one's talking about Nikki Haley. No one's going, oh, Nikki Haley, how dare you run against Trump? Because nobody cares.
I mean, it sounds like she's being sponsored by Halliburton for this entire run.
Oh, man, that town hall rant she did on why we should support war in Ukraine.
What a joke.
Was the most manipulative garbage I've ever heard.
Yeah.
Oh, she's awful.
If we don't stop them there, then Poland's next. And basically, we have to risk World War III to prevent World War III.
Yep.
It's like, oh, you're just a blood-soaked monster like every other,
she was like, we're here because World War III is next, and we're going to stop it. It's like, you're starting it.
Yeah,
you're making it happen. Oh, she's a liar.
God.
All right, let's do this. Okay, look, the aliens are in the news. We got the story from Timcast.com. Intelligence whistleblower says U.S. government has retrieved craft of non-human origin. Official provided Congress with information confirming that multiple agencies are reverse engineering the craft within top secret programs. David Charles Grush, a veteran of the National Geospatial Intelligence Agency and National Reconnaissance Office, is acting as a whistleblower and says the information on these programs has been illegally withheld from Congress, according to an exclusive report from the debrief. Grush's disclosures reveal that for decades, the U.S. government, acting in concert with allies and defense contractors, has recovered intact vehicles and partially intact vehicles of exotic origin, non-human intelligence, whether extraterrestrial or unknown origin, based on the vehicle morphologies and material science testing and the possession of unique atomic arrangements and radiological signatures.
Does it say when they recovered it?
No, it just says over the past 2 decades.
Oh, okay. It's like, if this thing crashed just as Biden is getting in trouble with the FBI, then I've got questions. But if it's
and
something
it crashed
that's been...
just behind where the FBI was speaking at their press conference. Look at this. He says the UFO programs have been concealed within multiple agencies nesting. Unidentified aerial phenomena. It's unidentified autonomous phenomena, isn't it?
Yeah.
No. Anomalous.
Anomalous, yes.
Unidentified anomalous phenomena. Activities in conventional secret access programs without appropriate reporting to various oversight authorities. Less than a week before the debrief report was published, NASA held its first ever public hearing on UFOs, where members of a task force created by the space agency discussed findings from their investigations.
Imagine you're the person...
there you go.
We had a public hearing. We had a public hearing. We're out in front of us. This says NASA.
Imagine you're the person who doesn't know any of this is real, but then they come to you to be on the task force, and they're like, and by the way, aliens are real.
It's like every movie ever.
Yeah, it's like somebody has to be there. Just like you get hired, you don't know they're real, and then some dude who works in your department has to come to you and be like, by the way, like aliens are real, and we're going to ask us to work with us on this.
No
it's
way.
Crazy.
Everyone who works at NASA thinks aliens are real. You cannot prove that wrong. Everyone is at least open to the possibility if you go work for NASA.
Yeah, but this isn't just NASA. This is other departments in the government, right?
Who was the guest on Rogan? He was on there a couple times, I think, that said that he worked in this department. Do you remember who I'm talking about? Serge. I feel like Serge knows.
Yeah.
You're not talking about that guy from the 90s, are you?
Yeah.
Yeah, I'm sure you're
talking about. But that story seems to be mostly bunk, if you ask me.
Really?
Yeah, I forgot his name. Do you remember his name?
Trying to rack my brain.
He said he saw a little green man. And then later on, they were like, why did you say this? Like, as a puppet. And it's like, oh, come on, dude. Either it was an alien or it wasn't.
Oh, maybe I'm thinking of a different person. I'm not sure, but
yeah, he said he worked in a lab and that they had this
and
like
he had to
anti-gravity
reverse engineer.
thing.
Yeah. Okay. Well, if he said he saw a little green man, I don't know.
Remember it off the top of my head.
Yeah, I can't remember his name. I'm gonna look it up.
Tom Green?
No,
everybody,
not Tom Green.
Bob Lazar. There you go.
Bob Lazar.
Chat's got us covered. They're smarter than we are. So
Yes,
they know.
they have better recollection.
I put Joe Rogan, Little Green Man guest into the search engine. It came up with Tom Green. So I don't know.
What I found interesting about this article is that they said that the main reason that they were disclosing it is because they wanted to prove that it has not been the U.S. that has been suppressing this information for the past 50 years. They said that this is a worldwide phenomenon and that most countries or most governments around the world have the same information, and no one's talking about it. And I think that's absolutely fascinating.
Well, isn't that the kind of one of the theories? It's like conspiracy theories are hard to it's hard to believe in conspiracy theories because the idea that many people could uniformly stay quiet is hard to believe, right? So am I supposed to believe that some nation that wants into the UN and has evidence of aliens isn't going to use that as some type of leverage point, like let us in, or we're going to tell everybody about the aliens that crashed here?
Unless the UN is like, no, we don't talk about the aliens. So if you want into the UN, you don't talk about.
Well, that's
this.
what I'm saying.
Sounds good. We won't.
Yeah, he's saying you blackmail your way into NATO or whatever.
What if the aliens took over a long time ago, and everything we think about public life is just orchestrated for the facilitation? It's kind of like, chickens in a chicken coop. You show up, you do the thing. The chickens have no idea what's going on, but you make them think something's happening.
It's a distinct possibility that we've been.
Like there's no real war. There is a war, but it's being done for some specific purpose. The lockdowns were for some specific purpose.
Yeah, well,
a global event.
A lot of people think that the lockdowns were a product of an effort to be able to cover up the printing press that was necessary, or the printing that was necessary to deal with the
collapse of the financial system.
Exactly.
Yeah. If you look at the monetary charts from the Great Recession from 2008, from the crash, there's a massive spike in the influx of and printing of money, the expansion of the money supply, and then COVID is boom.
Right. Well, there was the reason that people think this is that late 2019, I think it was November of 2019, the overnight lending rate between central banks spiked massively, and that signals oftentimes a contagion event that's happening where no one is trusting anybody to lend money. Basically, you have liquidity dry up, and then you have to turn on the printing press, but you have to have an excuse to do so without the entire economy collapsing. So that's where the COVID rollout. I don't necessarily buy it, but it's an interesting thesis.
So the idea is that it covers up for the fact that there would be panic if they just turned it on for no reason.
Exactly.
Okay.
Well, and because you shut down the economy, you essentially you give people a total distraction. You think that you would have never been able to get permission to print. I think it was $4.5 or $5 trillion in 2020. I don't think you could have ever gotten that permitted unless it was like an alien invasion or a pandemic.
Well, that means next time we get the alien invasion.
Honestly, I think it's
hopefully in our lifetime.
We've talked about it that the financial plan was to prevent a hard fall to create a slow fall. So instead of the whole system just breaking overnight and everyone losing their minds, which would destroy everything,
right,
they make it a slow fall and control the descent, and then things are slowly getting worse economically and in cities. But it's better than one day you have a city and the next day you have just riots and the city being burned down.
Well, the persistent inflation that's a product of the lockdowns and the printing that happened in 2020, I don't think people understand how, deleterious, I think that's the word, that is for civilization. To have so many young people that now feel as if they can't afford to ever purchase a home. And they're not wrong, many of them. And I just think that once you have essentially dispirited all of the young men and women, of course, in civilization, it's like, well, then I think that you suddenly...
We appreciate your inclusion.
Yes, I'm very woke. I had to include the lady here. I think that once you've gotten to that position, well, then the potential for wars as distraction increases exponentially because you have so many people that are purposeless and the passion. Yeah, disenfranchised. It's terrible.
It's like a whole subsect of memes that's like, it says my biggest mistake was being in the third grade during the 2008 financial crisis, so I couldn't buy a home. Yeah. That's how it is for a lot of people, and I think you're right. It's funny because I'm one of those people whenever I would hear people talk about their annoyances with the boomers, right? Go to college and pay for your college on your summer job, which they don't understand that is just not a possibility anymore. I would still get annoyed with the people who are doing that because I'm like, look, I'm not saying that they're not stupid for talking like that and being clearly devoid of reality now, but I do get annoyed when people don't take responsibility for their own actions and just complain about it. But the more this happens, the more you're like, most of us aren't going to be able to afford a house in our lifetime, and it's just getting worse.
Yeah, and if you can't afford a house, how do you start a family? If you can't move forward in any way, what is to stop essentially civilization from falling apart? And
if you don't have kids, if you don't have a reason to plan for the future or to actually focus on the biggest problems that face us as a people, because you're now thinking about your kids and your grandkids, basically your entire progeny. well, then you start to have really what's called high time preference behavior, where you start to borrow and live in debt, and you're not so much worried about your health or achievement or starting a business or doing anything. And I think that once you have that formula, well, then America as the leader of the world is essentially a memory.
And Hollywood and all these industries are telling you to live in the now, don't start a family, and just indulge your every whim.
Yeah, it's complete self-indulgence culture.
Yeah.
But you can understand why if you are being told, well, go to college and go into massive amounts of debt to never be able to afford anything, to work for soulless companies that don't represent your values and ultimately will chew you up and spit you out. That's not a fun time.
And even if they do represent your values, it's still a soulless corporation that you have no connection to. Why? So you can work your way up to middle management. Fantastic.
And you can be known on the internet and not know anyone around you in your giant apartment complex.
This is why it's so important that in my opinion, the libertarians lead the way in educating as to what central banking does to an economy and to a civilization. And so few people understand it really in depth that they misattribute the blame to capitalism. This is not capitalism. When you have a central bank, by its very nature, you don't have capitalism right away, because you have the capacity to control the most important market signal there is, which is both the quantity of currency as well as the interest rate, so the price that you pay for that currency. It's devastating to an economy and ultimately to a culture. And this is a product. This is a trend that has persisted when it comes to central banking throughout Western civilization for thousands of years, and yet, if you bring it up to somebody that's recent college grad, they'll just be like, no, it's the greedy Goldman Sachs. It's like, no. Those dudes are a product of central banking. BlackRock and its $9 trillion is a product of central banking.
Do you think they do that because they're not educated? Like they don't have any kind of financial literacy? They don't understand economics really?
The schools are teaching them differently.
That's really the problem.
Schools.
I think it's that schools don't teach this at all. They prefer to pad their education with like gender expression or whatever else.
Well, I mean, the primary thing, if you get any economics education in academia, it's going to be Marxist leaning, which is always, aiming from Jump Street to undermine and debase what actual free market capitalism is, which is just voluntary trade amongst people. It doesn't really have anything to do with the government at all. But then they manage to essentially suppress any knowledge about central banking and what that creates. Honestly, most of them don't even understand it. I've had Jimmy Dore on my show. We talked about this at length, and I love Jimmy Dore. I think he's brilliant. But when I talked to him about it, he's like, look, I don't understand central banking. And I was like, Jimmy, if you're going to talk about the pitfalls of capitalism and you don't understand central banking, well, we got to go back to square one, brother. Like we got to, because I honestly think that he and RFK and so many of these guys that seem to understand so much of the problems of the world that the libertarians identify too, ultimately their solutions are wrong because they don't understand the root of the problem. And I don't say that as a paternal way or a talking down way. I just mean like I think that's honestly the issue here. And he was at least honest enough to admit it, that he's like, I don't understand central banking.
And a lot of these issues have been convoluted so heavily by the market. Like, also, it's like they blame capitalism, but they don't understand that what they're talking about is actually cronyism.
Exactly.
And in the combination of government and financial institutions.
We exist under an oligopoly in basically every market sector. And that's a product of both regulatory capture as well as essentially a fascistic alliance that exists between these businesses and the government regulators, as well as the central bank.
And aliens.
And aliens, Tim.
Yeah.
I try to point to...
Just trying to rope in the regular people because they're probably being like, I'm not interested in this. Aliens.
It's starting to like tune out.
But the aliens have capitalism. That's what we need to know. What do they use to pay for things?
They probably understand central banking is the thing.
How do they build those ships?
Aliens brought central banking. That means if you support central banking, you're supporting demons.
Demons from the sky.
Yeah. And I'm pretty sure it says in the Bible somewhere about not having central banks or something.
Because Tim is a religious scholar.
I'm gonna pivot it a different way to keep people's attention still. If we didn't have central banking, by now we would all be flying in UFOs. So abolish the Fed.
That's why the aliens want us to continue down the path of not understanding central banking. They want to have it for themselves and no one else because they're keeping the UFOs.
Exactly.
Maybe the aliens came here to control everything, to destabilize the economy so that we're forced to end the central banking system.
Sounds good to me.
So they're here to help.
This is going to be a great TV show.
They're like, we must liberate these
people.
people and get rid of their central banks. And then, the governments are
that's
like,
way more optimistic than them just being here to probe me. Because I didn't really want that.
Most of the time when I watch any show with aliens or any movie with aliens and I look at their ship, I'm like, how did they build that ship? Like, that's the number one question I ask. I'm like, they got tentacle arms. I'm like, they can't hold tools.
Yeah.
How do they build the ship? That's what I want to know.
They hold sticks with little fingers on them.
They got 3D printers, I figure, by that point. Like, just massive 3D printers that just 3D print the
This
ship.
is what always gets me about everything alien. Like, at some point, we can only understand them through the lens of our own understanding of humanity, right? So we're like, how do they build the ship? Like, how do we know on their planet they don't just grow ships? Like, if alien species exist, they're probably so different from us. Like, there was some show, like Hunt for Aliens or whatever, and some guy was like, I worked at Area 51 and I'm very knowledgeable. And he's describing, like, just weird looking humans. Like, he's saying they walked on 2 legs. Like, why would an alien be the similar shape to us? It doesn't make any sense to me. That's why I really need this to get declassified, because I want to understand. It just sounds like we are trying to read our own humanity into something else.
It's more likely that some dude got drunk and was stumbling home from a bar and then came across a goofy looking dude and was like, whoa, look at the guy. He's got a big head and big eyes. And, whoa, and then he passes out. Then he wakes up a few hours later and he's like, what time is it? And he looks at his watch or his phone. And he's like, 2 hours? 2 hours are gone, but I was just at the bar. And then he like tells everybody, it was 2 a.m. and then all of a sudden I blink and it's like 4 a.m. and there was this big headed thing. I swear it must have been an alien. It's like, dude, were you drinking?
He's like, that's irrelevant.
Did you black out? And did you just see some guy with a big head? That's just infinitely more plausible than actually aliens coming and abducting people, unfortunately.
And he's like, quick, the Biden family is corrupt. Throw him off my track.
You know what's really crazy? Yeah, right. You know what's really crazy is, like, imagine what a duck must be thinking when it lands near a decoy duck. It's just like, this dude duck is like, this chick ain't saying nothing. She's just standing there. Well, this is kind of weird. But I don't know. That's all right by me. And then imagine if aliens did come here, would they have some kind of decoys? Are there like android human decoys that walk around?
Yeah, it's Mark Zuckerberg.
Yeah, it's the NPCs, those people with no inner monologue that we hear about now that just walk around and they just exist without actually thinking about anything.
I honestly think that study has to be wrong, because I think people just don't know what it means to think.
Yeah.
Because they have to think.
They're thinking it, they're vocalizing it in their head differently than we are, I guess, would be the best way
But
to.
the fact that they don't understand it is still concerning to me.
No, of course.
Aiden Paladin did like a really like deep dive breakdown into that study that explained more or less what it meant. But yeah, I still like the idea that there's people that just walk around that just don't think about anything, because I overthink about literally everything as I'm doing. I'm like, I'm going to open the door. I'm like, is it left or is it right? And I'm thinking about this all the way to the door handle, and I'm just imagining people that don't think at all.
It would be a cheat code for like the highest level of meditation if you have no inner monologue, because you're just already in a Zen state. Yeah. I've been trying for years. I can't get it done.
Empty your mind. It's like Beavis and Butthead.
Yeah.
Did you watch the new one? They have new episodes.
Oh yeah,
of
they're
Beavis
great.
and Butthead.
They're actually really funny.
And they're meditating, and he's like, you have to empty your mind, enter an enlightened state, and then all of a sudden they just start floating up to like ascending into a higher plane because their brains are empty.
There's nothing there.
And then like they get there and there's like religious figures and great philosophers, and they just like their brains don't work.
People don't know this about Tim, but he does incredible impersonations. You were recapping an entire episode while we were playing poker on Friday of Beavis and Butthead, and I was like, I felt like Mike Judge was in the room with me.
Oh, I don't know. I don't think I'm particularly good at Beavis and Butthead.
Oh no, you are. You are.
You're gonna rival Seamus. You're gonna beat him out of the cartoon game and start voicing. I don't know. Am I stepping on something? Oh my gosh!
Surpass.
Seamus ain't got nothing with his silly. He's not here to defend himself, which is perfect.
I'm gonna need to see some cartoons really quick. We're gonna have a whole side-by-side competition.
All right, let's give everybody some good news, ladies and gentlemen. Victory, you win, I guess. Navy removes Pride Month posts amid right-wing backlash. NASCAR, Major League Baseball also targeted. So that's basically it.
Targeted.
Pride Month is targeted. Pride Month basically ended in like a day. Major League Baseball had theirs up only for I think like a couple hours or something.
Yeah.
NASCAR took theirs down. The Navy took it down because they were getting slammed. The funny thing is, they're all like, the media, CNN is trying to cover this up. They're trying to say like, no, it had nothing to do with this. They were always planning on changing their logos. What are you talking about? The meme is that for the month they changed their logos.
July 1st.
It's June 5th. June 5th. They took them all down. People are freaking out. Someone super chatted us just a moment ago saying they know somebody in marketing at Walmart, and Walmart's freaking out because they don't know what to do. So here's the best part. We have this story from CNBC as well. It says boycotts hit stocks hard. Here's what might be next for Bud, Target, and others caught in the anti-Pride backlash. This is CNBC saying their stocks are going down. Even right now, Target's down, right? Anheuser-Busch, Bud. Oh, look at Bud saw an increase of 0.31%. Good for them. But CNN ran an article. This is from June 3rd. CNN ran an article saying that the reason that Target stock is going down has nothing to do with the conservative boycotts. And it's just economic factors and market downturns. Except for the fact that Walmart's stock is stable.
Right.
Around the same time, Walmart lost a few percentage points and then went back up. Target tanked by nearly 17 points.
Yeah, I don't think that the timing is coincidental. But that being said, there is obviously, commercial real estate and the businesses that function out of there are not doing great. So that makes sense. But I think that the precipitous decline is a product of the protests. And I'm personally really glad that it's happening. I think that it's been far too long that the left wing of the political aisle had all of the populist kind of rebellion against capitalism. And finally, the right wing was like, all right, like you guys, let me tangent real quickly, because it drives me crazy that every time there's one of these divides in our society, that it seems as if we're speaking totally different languages, or like the opposition doesn't understand us. It's like no one cared about adults doing any of this. Just making it crystal clear. It's when you came for the kids that you crossed the line.
The average person doesn't know that, though, because that's not how the media is reporting it. The
they're
media
lying.
is reporting it as
That's
blanket
fine.
dislike of LGBTQ.
That's why I'm clarifying.
That's substantially better for the right and substantially worse for the left or anybody who views themselves as like libertarian or classically liberal. Because if the narrative is so many people just don't like the LGBT stuff, then the average person who's seeing this is thinking, wow, no one in this country is okay with any kind of pride. Oh boy, I don't want to get involved in that stuff. And what's happening now is probably why Walmart's freaking out. Because these companies are thinking what pisses people off is just any kind of pride. When in actuality, it was specifically targeting kids. But they lied. They lied about Dylan Mulvaney. They said it was a single can. No, it was Dylan Mulvaney promoting Bud Light with multiple cans of Bud Light, drinking them to an audience who was under 21. It's because they're making products for children, which introduce them to sexual concepts.
Exactly.
The media then comes out and says, conservatives just don't like gay people. And what does that mean? It means that big corporations are going to be scared to do anything pride related, which is exactly what we're seeing. They took their logos down. The media lied to try and cover it up, and it's backfiring masterfully in their own faces.
I mean, I know you guys have made this point in the past week, but it's really important to understand that these corporations do not care about the LGBTQI plus community. It's all about their corporate equality index. It's all about their diversity, equity, and inclusion scores. It's all about BlackRock. It's all about ESG. It's all about the access to central banking and the political establishment that wants all of this. It's all about 2011 Barack Obama's, executive order that said that you had to have DEI departments in every federal government agency. It's all about government intervention into the economy. This is not an organic thing whatsoever, and I'm sick of pretending that this is just the woke takeover of the economy. No. This is about the government and the corporations getting in bed together and then pretending as if everybody's gay for some reason.
The other thing that's interesting about it is if you look back at it, it's actually like a lot of the people that are gay, that aren't necessarily enamored with the movement, call it rainbow capitalism and don't like it anyways because they know that it's pandering to a market, that it's disingenuous, right? There was a great video from Signal Productions a couple of months ago where they talk about how what they deem as woke capitalism was born out of the crash of 2008 when all of these corporations, basically the banks all crashed and they have to be bailed out, and they're like, well, how can we repair our image? Oh, I know. And then if you see that great there's this great like side-by-side picture, and it's like 2008, and it's them basically saying no bailing out the banks, and then now it's like a pride float from JP Morgan in like 2018, and they just masterfully covered up what they did by basically pushing towards an agenda that they know wasn't for a long time going to get any pushback from anyone, because nobody wanted to be the bad guy who said, we don't support this, we don't want this, and for whatever reason, right? And now you see the way this is going, and yes, it is ESG scores, it's all these things, but to me, it's just disingenuous. More than anything, it's always just disingenuous.
Yeah, well, and it ultimately doesn't alleviate any of the issues that these communities are concerned with. Yeah. And it's a pure misdirect, and that's what drives me crazy and why it ought to be bipartisan, just as it ought to be bipartisan bipartisan, that the FBI gets abolished by Democrats who are concerned about Martin Luther King Jr.'s either assassination or the threats upon his life in terms of the letters where they were telling him that he should kill himself, or from the right wing where it's like, okay, yeah, you have the FBI, which has been persecuting and essentially attempting to, soft coup Donald Trump since 2015.
Frame him as a traitor.
Exactly. And or covering up for Hunter Biden's laptop, or, the list goes on and on. It's like, these ought to be bipartisan issues. The left ought to also hate ESG. This isn't doing anything that you want to see in the world ultimately. It is creating the very monopolies that you claim to be fighting. Yeah, but it's creating them.
They love Disney, even though they hate corporations. It's really funny. There's a great amount of kind of cognitive dissonance with a lot of it. They don't understand that a lot of these corporations that they claim to hate, but then they love other ones. So it doesn't actually make any sense.
I think it's a symptom of the self-indulgence culture, right? Like, they can't see past the fact that they may be part of that group, or they don't want to seem like the hateful person. They can't see the other implications of why this business is happening, because if they don't buy the Pride merch, if they don't participate, then they themselves are a bad person. There's no long-term thinking, really. And that's what I find most interesting. I think, we all can recognize that, especially gay marriage was one of the fastest shifting cultural issues of anything. I don't think anything compares to the way that, especially our generation, younger generations, just got on board and were like, yep, everyone should be able to get married. Sounds good. This was not true for the transgender movement. And I think that is what is the splintering point here. Instead of it becoming like a more embracing, open-minded community, they started pushing things that people felt uncomfortable with and were willing to speak out about. I don't think they realized that consenting adults acting and behaving and getting married was completely different from gender ideology that has to be introduced before puberty.
There's a lot of authoritarian notions and all that. Like we're not that long off of Bake the Cake. That wasn't that long ago. That was what, 2016?
Yeah, Bake the Cake.
I mean, it's ongoing, to be honest.
But the original case was 2016. Gay marriage was legalized when? In
2012?
2013, I thought. 13? So, there's a lot of authoritarian movement in there.
Legalized in 2014, I thought.
Okay.
Wow,
so that's not that long off that, right? So a lot of those, they were persecuted for a period of time, at least in the older generations, right? The older generation of people in that group were persecuted amongst other people. And I do think that there is a lot of fear out of the, what does James Lindsay point out? He goes, it's the specter of the dad not accepting the gay son, right? There's a lot of fear there, but that's not the reality in a lot of places that we live in anymore. Like, my generation was not raised to think that way. We still don't think that way. But the problem is there's no nuance there anymore.
Let's also clarify. The government is never going to make your dad accept you.
No.
That's not how it works. And I think that that's a big problem with these folks, is that, because they've dealt with a culture that was very antagonistic towards their lifestyle, they have turned towards the government and kind of replaced their father in that way, and it's extraordinarily unhealthy. And I'm not speaking broadly here. There are obviously lots of gay and trans people that don't feel that way, but I do think that is a big reason that the left kind of has replaced both God as well as their father with the state.
Family in general.
2015.
Yeah. Okay.
Wow.
Mary always gets that one right. She always says 2015. I'm like, that doesn't sound right to me, but apparently it was 2015.
Yeah, I thought it was earlier than that.
So did I.
But that's that's the thing, right? They've been they recruit very well because they push out family. They push out the concept of any type of religion. And if you don't, one specific type of religion, they're much more tolerant of the other religions, depending on when they're talking about it and who they're talking about it with. But in this case, there's a big push away from family in those cases because they want you to be reliant on the government, and they want you to see the government as your family, as your parent.
Those are all prerequisites for joining a cult. Yep. What you just described is what you do when you're trying to groom someone into a cult. Is you offer them basically one way out. You alienate them from their friends and their family,
make them fear the outside,
Exactly.
Yeah, I mean, I think with the expansion of the LGBTQ plus all of the letters community, they really did miss the point of what was happening in culture, right? They just thought, I mean, it's very sort of greedy of them to be like, we'll just continue to include more things and more people feel marginalized and then run to us and feel a part of it. I just wrote this story today. The Alliance Defending Freedom was representing a dad who's a middle school soccer coach in Vermont, and his daughter was a freshman in high school, a biological male who identifies as female, another teenager, was allowed to change in the locker room with all the girls. She told her friends, like, that feels uncomfortable. He's a dude. He shouldn't be in here. She got reported to the school. She got suspended. She had to take part in an equity circle or
struggle
something.
session.
It was crazy. Her dad, who's a coach in the school district, defended her on Facebook, and he got suspended without pay until, and then, so that happened end of last year. He just got a settlement for like $125,000. They have to take down all of the gender related stuff in the school off its website. I mean, we can see that there is a different current happening with this end of the alphabet they have tacked on to this original group. I think we didn't see this with, issues like gay marriage because, number one, it affected adults predominantly, and it didn't have to be introduced in schools to children. I think this is where, if you're trying to promote ESG, you should have been able to see this train wreck coming, because these things are not the same, even though you put all of the letters together.
Yeah, well, I think that kind of stems more back into the progressivist ideology where like you're never content. Yeah. And you always go faster, and you always want to go after the youth because they're the most malleable. Well, and that's where the line was drawn by the parents. It's like, you cannot come for our kids. We will stop you.
And a lot of people felt that, like, look, when we legalized gay marriage, that was the last great civil rights battle, right?
Right.
Like, what do we now?
We need a new victim
for?
class.
Yeah.
We need more people to be oppressed.
Yeah. And I just like it's also, I think a big part of this is like there's plenty of good people who just don't understand that this is going on, that this type of war is going on within that community. I was looking at a meme earlier today from a friend of mine who's a good person, is absolutely a fantastic person. And the meme says, it's a picture of a rainbow. And it says like, boycott the sky. They're turning the sky gay. What they're doing, like, this is a person who doesn't understand the nuances of the argument, right? They don't understand that I don't care if you, an adult, are gay and do whatever you want. I don't care. I care that you're pushing an ideology on children who cannot consent to that type of thing.
Well, sexualization. Yeah. And so the way I explain it, there's this video that's going around where it shows a bunch of school children waving pride flags and marching in the school. And the reason why I explain, there's this tweet from Tim Heidecker where he said, screw you, Matt Walsh. The goal is to normalize this for kids. Okay. And so I try to explain, listen, that's grooming, all right? Literally what the school is doing is grooming. They may be unwitting accomplices to the grooming process, but they are. And it's one thing to show a child a rainbow and say rainbows are in the sky and they're pretty. That's not grooming. It's another thing to say, here's a rainbow with the intent of explaining to you adult sexuality. So grooming, what these people try to, like, I got to say, Tim Heidecker really does jump right in to what the purpose of grooming is. 100%. The purpose of grooming is so that you can introduce one step at a time from the lightest introduction to the most hardcore elements slowly over time. It's not grooming if you were to walk up to a person and say, let me explain to you gay sex and these things in this book. That's not grooming. That's overt. That's you going and saying, I want to show you this thing. So if you were going to introduce these concepts to a child innocently, oh, it's just pride, love is love. That's the first step in what? Well, what does the L stand for? What does the B and the G stand for? These are adult sexual preferences. Children don't need to learn about these things until after they learn about the general birds and the bees. So why is that children who are under that age are being introduced to this type of these types of ideas? And more importantly, there's a video of a pride parade in West Hollywood where there are two adult men performing sex acts on each other, mainly one guy and another guy. It's BDSM kink foreplay, not like anything super gratuitous, but it is a sex act, right. a foreplay BDSM in front of the public on a truck in the parade. Spanking him with flogging him in his bare ass in front of everybody, including children. Yeah, that's grooming. But that's level 2. Level 1 is, look at the rainbow. Isn't the rainbow pretty? The rainbow's great. You should come to a pride event and see how awesome it is. Then when they go to the pride event, what do they see? They see foreplay and BDSM. That is why it is grooming. So if they're now showing this stuff in the front of a Target store, pride flags and all that stuff, no, they're not saying love is love. They're saying the next phase in the grooming process is to introduce children to what they're doing on the streets. And then where do you go from there? You get kids doing drag, where they're ripping their clothing off on stage in gay bars for money, which has already happened. So then you get someone like Tim Heidecker, who I assume is probably just a very ignorant cultist. He doesn't know any of this. He hasn't ever read anything about it. All he knows is that he's on Twitter and everyone around him says, it's totally fine, it's totally normal, accept it. So then he just says, yeah, and starts tweeting about it. Or it's possible he actually is super down with grooming kids because he's into kids or something like that. But like, let me just say it once again, simply. You show a child a rainbow and say, rainbows are pretty, not grooming. You show a child a rainbow and say, do you know what love is? Do you know what pride is? Do you know what lesbian means? Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's grooming. Yep. That's what they're doing.
And those conversations should be had when the parent is ready with their child. And I think that the big problem is that many progressives and essentially the entire Democratic Party, as well as some on the Republican side too, think that public schools are there to raise your kid. And that is not the purpose. It is to educate them on the bare bones of how to be, to become an adult and be a functioning person in the world. It's not to teach them about sex. It's not to teach them about sexual orientation or any of this other stuff. And the fact that they would do it surreptitiously is such a just backstab to the parents. And the fact that and then to have the FBI investigate these parents is just unspeakably evil.
Is modeling bad? No, of course not. What kind of model? Lifestyle? Right. So you show up and you wear like a frilly sundress and you make cookies and they take pictures of you and then they sell in a catalog cookware. Lifestyle modeling, no big deal. You're wearing a suit and you got a briefcase and you're smiling. Modeling's totally great. But we've all heard the stories about young women who will be approached online by someone or see an ad that says, come be a model, and then fly out. We're a modeling agency. You know how it works. Here's who we've worked with. And then what do the women end up actually doing? Because they know that if they tell the woman, we want you to be a prostitute on camera, they'll say no. You have to groom them by saying modeling is a totally normal thing that everyone knows and loves. Yep. Now, hold on. If a modeling agent goes to a mother who has a small child and says, I think your kid should model. I work with this agency. We do a whole bunch of different products. Is that grooming? No, of course not. Kids model all the time. But what if the person's intention is to expose that child to something sexual? Now you understand grooming, and that's what they're doing at these pride events.
And that's what Epstein was doing as well.
Well, and I think that's a great example. I would also point out that a lot of parents are already aware that people who are likely to groom your children are people who have regular access to them. So it might be someone that you're working with in a professional capacity, but it could be their coach. It could be anyone at their school. It could be a babysitter you leave them with. Like, that's why parents have to be so vigilant. I can understand the fear, right? But just because the school says, oh, we're an authority and your kid is supposed to know this, like, if you as a parent feel like, hey, I don't think they're old enough to be talking about sexual orientation, I don't think this conversation about gender is age appropriate, like, that's why we need more parents to get involved in school boards, because you guys know what's best for your children. And I think that's where so many parents feel like they're trusting the experts. I'm not a teacher. I don't know anything. Well, you're doing your kid, and you should speak up.
And a lot of the teachers, the worst of the worst, are the ones that say, you should trust us. We're the authority. And you've seen those posts before. And that's just, as far as I'm concerned, that's
let the teachers teach. There are probably lots of wonderful teachers, right? It's cameras. Not every single one.
There should be cameras in every single school.
And some, I'm sure, are decent people.
Right.
For the parents.
Well, this is one of the big problems that came with online schooling, that teachers got upset because parents were like, wait, what are you teaching them? Because
that wasn't
they were
a problem.
doing school
That was great.
Problems for the teachers or for the schools, because they're having school in their living room and they're suddenly much more engaged with what their kid is hearing and what they're being told.
Exactly.
I just find this to be the most obvious solution, right? As soon as you saw what's going on.
Imagine being a parent and overhearing as you're making breakfast, the teacher say, don't tell your parents. Do you know what gay means? Right. Well, when a man loves another man, he takes his pants off. Don't tell your parents I told you this. And you're like the dad or the mom in the other room going like, what the? You walk in, you're like, what is this? And that was happening to a lot of people.
That's the biggest silver lining of the lockdowns, was so many of the parents sitting at home realizing exactly what kind of indoctrination process their child was being put through, and finally putting their foot down. I mean, on top of the fact that they were being forced masked and then ultimately forced a medication upon them, it's like that you just realize that you're entrusting a bunch of untrustworthy people to rear your
A bunch
child.
of strangers. You don't actually know.
Not even
Exactly.
just about untrustworthy, but just strangers, right? And like a lot of parents took for granted for a long time that you just assumed that I'm thinking back to my education. I don't know if my parents ran any background checks on any school I went to. They just figured,
Never.
You went to this public school and that's what you did.
I
right?
went to public school in a really small town, and at least 4 of my friends' parents worked at the school, and we knew them. But again, I went to a very, very, very small school. It's unusual. If you live in a major suburb and you have more than 200 kids in each grade, there's no way you also know their teachers personally.
No, I had 1,000.
Yeah, exactly.
In my graduating class was 1,000 people. It's basically a college campus at that point. But you're dealing with a bunch of look. I don't really. I'm just so grateful that so many people. I mean, if you look at the charts of homeschooling over the past 30 years, it's unbelievable. It's parabolic. It's fantastic. And I think that, we talk a lot about the cultural degradation in America. So much of that will be alleviated and solved by homeschooling and essentially cutting that tie between the child and the state in terms of thinking like, this is the person who I'm going to rely on, not just for my education, but for my food, my employment, my, the language I'm supposed to use, like all of that, it gets brought back down to the basics, and you get to have people that are formulating, real autonomous, independent, kind of Americans.
And it's not like we have great test scores coming out of America right now anyways. We're not exactly knocking
Our
it out
public
of the...
school system is not something to brag about.
It's not knocking you out of the park where you're like, yeah, it's risky, but at least he's getting a great education.
get
That's
results.
not the story here.
I want to jump to a different story here, and I want to start by asking y'all a question. Have you ever seen a sci-fi dystopian movie or book where people are forced to home migrants in their own homes? Because I'm thinking about it, and I'm like, well, there's the one where they give everyone drugs. There's the one where everyone's locked in their house. There's the one where they're burning all the books. There's the one where the pigs are in charge. Is there one where it's like you live in a house and then one day they show up with a guy from a foreign country and like he lives here now? Well, here's the story from Mediaite. New York City Mayor Eric Adams suggests locals could eventually house migrants in their own homes for extra cash. That's right. The discussion took place on Monday during an address at City Hall. Adams announced that houses of worship had stepped up around the city, volunteering to open up their doors to assist with giving migrants places to stay. A clip from the announcement began circulating on Twitter via Greg Price. According to ABC7, the new 2-year partnership with New York Disaster Interfaith Services will allow up to 50 houses of worship or faith-based spaces to offer overnight shelter for up to 19 single adult men at each location. Great. This step was the first of many, yada, yada. He says they have spare rooms, they have locales, and if we can find a way to get over the 30-day rule and other rules the government has in place, we can take that $4.2 billion, 4.3 now, that we potentially have to spend, and we can put it back in the pockets of everyday New Yorkers, everyday houses of worship, instead of putting it in the pockets of corporations. They're basically saying, you are going to have illegal immigrants living in your home, but don't worry, we'll pay you. I didn't see that one coming.
It's kind of a Third Amendment violation in it. I mean,
He's stating it. He hasn't enlisted them
It's
in the
not,
army,
though.
but
yeah.
It's not. They're not soldiers.
soldiers.
I bet same.
Maybe it's a private property rights. Fourth
Well, yeah.
Amendment, maybe. I don't know. But there's
clearly a property rights violation.
this
Clearly.
viral video coming out of
he's
Chicago
paying you. It's fine.
where people are at a city meeting and they're saying that they're going to be bringing in like 250 adult men, illegal immigrants. And these people are screaming like, are you insane? How could you do this? And it's funny because the people on the panel or whatever are smugly saying, we are going to do this, this, and this. And it's just like, y'all voted for it. You keep voting for the same thing. You mark the D every time. D, D, D. And then what happens is they smack you around. They strip you of your rights and you go, how could this have happened to me again? For 100 years, Chicago, you have been voting in Democrats and it keeps getting worse. Dude, I can't tell you how it gets worse nonstop in Chicago.
I know.
But you have to give them the 50th chance. This
They're like,
time,
oh yeah,
ship
they're like, the police in Chicago are operating black sites where they kidnap people and lock them up for 10 days and no one knows where they go. It's like, okay, why did your grandfather, your father, and you vote for it? I'm sorry, dude, I'm out of Chicago. I left.
Yeah.
Because it's like after the crime just got worse, after the policies got worse, and everyone's like, I'm going to vote Democrat again this time. I'm like, okay.
I completely relate to your exasperation because I was born and raised in California and I watched the same thing, and we just kept voting for more and more taxes and increasing the size of the state, and it just slowly destroyed the state. And I think that's the same thing that's happening, maybe not with the outskirts of Illinois, but certainly Chicago itself. It's like a third world hellhole.
I remember in the Summer of Love riots, there was a viral leaked audio clip. Chicago's got aldermen. They're like neighborhood politicians. They're in charge of these various neighborhoods. And apparently, it's been a long time since I covered it, but when the riots were happening downtown, they basically lifted the bridges to force the rioters into neighborhoods to protect the financial areas, sacrificing the residential areas. Well, that's what you get.
Yeah.
You keep voting for it over and over and over again. They keep doing it. They did it again. They voted for that far left guy.
Yeah.
There you go.
They replaced Beetlejuice with an even scarier figure. If that's even possible.
I think one of the most frustrating parts about New York City, though, is that they have begun busing to the counties outside, right? So, like, Eric Adam believes that the decision he makes for this major populous city is the decision he's making for the state.
Right.
And that's psychotic, basically, in my opinion. And there are different county elected officials who have filed lawsuits. They're fighting this, but he has decided, since he is accepting migrants, he also gets to install basically fraternity houses of unmarried single illegal immigrants in your neighborhoods wherever he sees fit. That's crazy to me.
It's totally
he is
nuts.
not the mayor of these counties. He's only the mayor of New York City.
Well, I think this is ultimately why, even though people laugh it off, peaceful national divorce is happening in real time. I mean, the migration of people like myself or Tim that are fleeing these blue hellholes is like, that is what national divorce will look like ultimately, is that people that share my ideology, that don't want an overpowerful state, we're going to go and be amongst our people.
We all saw last week that YouTube announced you can now deny the 2020 election again.
I know.
Which is just as a weird policy.
Weird timing.
But it's because they're intending to deny Trump's win. Trump wins in 2024. They are going to scream about, you name the country. Oh, China did it. Ooh, it's China now because, I don't know, whatever. Who knows where Russia will be. They're gonna claim Russia got Trump elected again.
What if they say Ukraine did it? That'd be interesting.
Well, they wouldn't say that because they're fighting with Ukraine. They're going to say Russia did it to stop so that Trump would stop helping Ukraine. Yeah. Then they're going to come up. Look, there's going to be AI fake evidence. There's going to be AI fake images. I'm pretty sure news outlets are already using AI images. Pretty sure. We use AI images at timcast.com, but they're edited to look like art. It's not like a picture. We'll cut the person out and put them over something and it looks cartoony.
And it's not, we don't use it as supporting evidence as an article. We use it completely as just...
Yeah, but this is what so I can't say for sure, but I've seen articles that look like it's AI. And it's not the article of the subject. I'm sorry, it's not the image of the subject. It is a related image. Mm-hmm. So a typical thing is they'll say, like, you'll get an article and it'll be like, new drug approved by FDA, and it'll just show like a hand with a purple glove, like injecting something. It's totally unrelated. It's a stock photograph. It looks like they're using AI stock photographs, but people could confuse as being the real thing. But anyway, I digress. When it comes to the election, yeah, they're going to pull out all the stops. I think right now, strong possibility Trump wins. We'll see. Don't know for sure. Strong possibility. And we already saw with the Boston Globe report in the Democrats' war game, they said if Trump wins, they will encourage the West Coast to secede from the Union.
Which there was that poll 2 years ago, it was right when I started working here, where they floated a poll of people saying, like, would you be open to secession? And it was the South and the West Coast that were like, sounds good. They were the most in support of it. There was support across the country, but it was the South and West Coast that were like, we are willing to split up.
Yeah,
it sounds
like,
acceptable.
I don't hate you. I just don't want you to rule over me anymore. It's pretty straightforward. I just want to not have to live amongst people that hate me, and that's how it feels now. And it's weird because it happens so seemingly overnight. But I think even the people on the left feel it too. Like, you guys, if your perception of our protests about Target or Bud Light or anything like that is that we hate rainbows, well, look, you're not even attempting to understand our worldview. Like, you see us as caricatures. Like, I understand your position better than you've even begun to understand mine.
Well, there's been more than a few studies that have shown that, right? That people who are right-leaning individuals are much more likely to be able to grasp the concepts of someone who is left-leaning or a leftist than vice versa. Because when you are a right-leaning person, person, you are constantly inundated with views that are not your own.
Exactly.
Whether because if you're in an airport, you're seeing CNN. If you're driving in your car, it's NPR. If you are a left-wing individual, you are almost forced into an echo chamber that you didn't even ask for because you're never even given the chance to look for views. You have to actively go look for those views.
Let me prove the case. This is very easy to prove this. The war in Ukraine. How in the hell did they convince the left that spending over $100 billion on a war that they don't know anything about? These people, I've debated them. They don't know anything about the history in Ukraine. They know nothing about it.
They could not put Ukraine on a map.
No, they know nothing. Nothing at all.
We've had lefties on the show and they just go, oh, I don't know about that.
Yeah, exactly. Or I didn't read that in the New York Times, so it can't be true. I mean, that was what Destiny's rejoinder was in my debate with him. But that's how in my opinion, that the right now consists of the critical thinking folks. It hasn't always been that way. Certainly during the WMDs in Iraq, it wasn't that way, but it is now. They're the critical thinkers. The people on the left are like drones. They're not thinking at all. It's crazy to witness.
That started all the way up through Obama, though, right? Like whether they knew it or not, they were slowly pushed pro-war.
True.
Because it just never stopped, right? He said it was going to end, and it just kept going.
They hid that, though. Yeah. They hid his drone campaigns. They didn't talk about the thousands of innocents that were murdered from the sky robots by Obama. But then the war in Ukraine, you can't hide that. The people on the left know about that.
We still invaded more countries under Obama. It's just that it wasn't reported on as widely.
In Syria, Libya,
yeah. So
that was more Hillary Clinton in my blame spectrum, but yes.
But it's still under that neoliberal establishment.
Yes.
So a lot of those people are still, whether they admit it or not, they were pushed to that perspective, and they just don't realize that it's really funny because I watch a lot of old Hollywood, and they are just pro-war. Like it's really like the movies maybe from a bigger director might do something that pushes like an anti-war stance back in the day, but in the end, they still make these movies that still push pro-U.S. government policies. It's bonkers now to see people who are pushing it, and they don't really understand because they heard Russia bad. Russia invaded, therefore Russia bad.
Yeah.
And that's really as far as they need to take it, because it's a one-dimensional level of thinking that goes beyond, that doesn't go beyond
too
just
complicated. I don't think people want to hold on to thought that takes more than 10 seconds to explain. We have no attention span anymore. Right? If I were to mention Crimea, I think everyone would be like, that's irrelevant. I have no idea how that's connected at all.
If you Donbass region, the 8-year civil war, the bombing campaigns, like
they're like, it's too much. Russia's bad. I'm going to speak
exactly.
And I'm completely fine with that if they want to have one-dimensional level of thinking, but don't put a flag in your bio and then like it's one thing to just say, look, I don't know and I don't care.
Right.
I can almost respect that more. Like you just choose to not engage. You can choose not to engage, but you don't get to then put a symbol for the opposing argument in your profile.
I disagree. I think people who identify as left-leaning in any capacity feel obligated to show outward signs that they are with the cult. Right?
Remember the mask thing?
Do you remember the black square
thing? The people
thing?
saying that, oh no, I'm still going to keep wearing a mask even though they say I don't have to because people think I'm a Republican if I take it off.
Right. Yeah. Yeah, it's all about virtue signaling and being in group signaling.
I did hear people on the right say, "Look, I don't want to wear a mask in there because they'll think I'm a leftist as well." And I'm like,
that doesn't make sense. But no one would choose to wear a mask for no reason. No one would just be like, for literally no reason I'll put a mask on. So conservatives weren't the people who are like, I would prefer to wear a mask. They were the opposite. And then liberals are the people who are like, I don't care if I need to or not. People will think I'm conservative if I don't.
I still I saw somebody in a car the other day with a mask on by themselves. I thought that was long gone, but by that's still a thing.
It's wild.
See, I felt your outrage. I felt that day one because I was like, you're by yourself. Yeah. There's nothing you can be protecting yourself from. Nothing at all.
Remember those like clean car stickers? You know, like the back of the car would have like those the clean air stickers. You're seeing those in California?
Probably.
Yeah.
I like the people playing the flute with the cut hole in the mask, and I heard people actually rationalizing it, who are saying like, look, like they're acting like you're stupid. They're like, look, they need you to get used to seeing people wearing a mask. It totally makes sense. I'm like, no. Because like in Minnesota, the state government was having people do Zoom meetings with masks on, and there were people who were like, "Look, it's fine." It's like they want to get you used to seeing what people look like with a mask on. I'm like, so they think you're an idiot? Like what?
I mean, I knew people who quarantine spouses in their own bedrooms, and you're like, you all breathe the same air in your house. Like maybe that minimizes some risk, but I really feel like it's not what you think. I don't think this is as effective as you think it is. I think the strangest part of COVID is that as much as we all are like, obviously the mask thing is crazy, you should like it's over. There are still sort of ruins of this time period. Like 100%. I was thinking about, I was at an Outback Steakhouse the other weekend, and there were, you know how they have the booths, and for a while they were like, okay, you can go to restaurants if the restaurant constructs extra tall sort of blockers to keep germs from jumping the table, I guess, or I don't know what, but they're still there, and people are used to them. You don't even think about them anymore. You don't see them.
Go to Atlantic City. All the casinos, not all of them, but a lot of them have, actually I think all of them might, gigantic plastic barriers bolted to all their table games. Yeah. So when you sit down, you have a plexiglass room that you're in, and your hands can go underneath it.
Yeah. I remember when I was in Vegas in like 21 and I saw those for the first time, and I was like, oh, I live in a dystopic novel. Like this sucks.
Are they still there in Vegas?
I don't think so. I think they took them down. But
these things are there in a lot of places.
But see, you're talking about the physical relics. I want people to not forget about the spiritual relics that exist within the youth, as well as all of us. Ultimately, we all carry some sort of trauma forward from that experience.
The kids who are not going to be able to read facial expressions as accurately as others because in their formative years they were raised with an entire generation of parents who were too scared to spend time around their kids without a mask on.
No, they weren't scared. They were doing it because they have some kind of weird cult attachment where they want their neighbors to see them in masks.
No, I believe that a lot of the ones that if they're doing it around their kid, they're legitimately scared, and they've just been propagandized so heavily by the media that they're terrified of their own shadow.
Sure, some of them, but there's that famous story of the Munchausen's by proxy mom who cut out her daughter's salivary glands and their teeth fell out of her head, and then she got a boyfriend, and then she killed her mom. Yeah, I think there are a lot of parents who are like, the neighbors might see you, put your mask on. Yeah. Like, they didn't actually care. They're just like, I want people to see.
But I think that, Josie talks about this all the time. It's like, we are just suffering under 3 straight years of Munchausen by proxy on a grand scale. And it feels like the people that are speaking up on the behalf of the kids are somehow being painted as the dangerous ones. And that's so bizarre and inverted and feels kind of satanic, if I'm being honest. And this is coming from someone who's agnostic, but it really does feel like there's a possession that's taken over. It's weird.
But I think
aliens or demons, which one do you think it is?
I'd prefer it be aliens, because I don't want to go down the biblical line of thinking.
I have some great news for you. Just breaking today, aliens are coming.
Yeah, but here's the thing. If it's demons, at least there's angels. If it's aliens, it's just aliens.
True.
Then you're on your own.
But maybe they're benevolent.
The aliens that are brainwashing people and turning them into cultists?
No. I'm talking, they're here to save us from the brainwashing cultists that we live amongst.
It's easier. It's just the media. It's just the media being evil.
In all reality, it's a cult, and these things happen, and we can look through history and see they come and go in waves. You can look at all the different revolutions throughout history for whatever extremist ideology, and they follow similar patterns.
Yeah, but they didn't have the internet. I always wonder how the internet's going to affect that now, because information is spread so much farther and so much faster, and you reach people so much easier now that we've never experienced this type of revolution through this type of means where information is so easily accessed. It's like we talk about. Like, you can't just deprogram someone now if all of their ideology and all their cult leanings come from the internet. Yeah. Because as soon as you get them out, what do? Just ban them from the internet for life? That's never going to happen.
Let me tighten up your beehole even further. You have the debt super cycle, which is coming to an end. You have inflationary pressures, and we have $300 trillion in debt in derivatives markets that are global in nature. You have the potential for World War III on 2 fronts, both with China as well as Russia. You have Munchausen by proxy en masse amongst the children and the youth. You have a pandemic that looks as if it was came from somewhere else that I don't know if I'm still allowed to talk about or not.
There's a lab in Wuhan.
Okay, there you go. Yeah. And basically everybody that's culpable in all of this still walks free. Yep. Joe Biden, free. Trump under indictment for 1,000 different things. You have Anthony Fauci, free, does interviews, gets to just, carefree, even though he's
largest government
criminal.
pension of all time.
Yeah.
Gets books written about him and TV shows in his honor because people worship him like some type of god.
Like it's Tom Cruise.
That's just wrong.
But I bring up all those factors to say you then add on top of that the speed with which the internet transfers all of this information and the viral nature of these communication lines. And it's like, we are really I'm ultimately optimistic. I really am. But if you add all of those factors up and then you also put on top of that the internet and the communication speed and the increase, it's like, it's going to take some amount of luck to prevent a real cataclysm in the next decade. Like, it's just going to be very challenging to get through those weeds, in my opinion.
You know, we were talking about the woke stuff, and I was thinking about this earlier. I think the reason that we're seeing the success in the boycotts, it's not just because, and I think it's mostly not because people had some epiphany and they woke up and said, hey, wokeness is bad. I think what's happening is young people are more likely to be slightly more conservative, and you're seeing people in our generation and younger now becoming dominant forces in the market as we're entering our mid to late 30s into our 40s, and we are buying things as we would normally do. So in fact, I don't know how much of this anti-woke phenomena is actually related to a red pilling as it is related to young people who despise wokeness now having more money. And then when Target has been doing the Pride stuff for a decade, nobody cared.
Yeah.
And it is a combination of now they're doing the kids stuff. They may have done it for a long time, but now people are concerned about the kids stuff. But now I think you're looking at, I talked about how Republicans were having more kids in, it was like 3 to 4. For every 3 kids liberals were having, there were 4 kids conservatives were having. Then we see that was in 2000. Then it was reflected in Pew Research showing that Gen Z is slightly more conservative. Makes total sense then. When it comes to spending patterns, you will see the exact same thing. So whereas Target, for the boomers, the Gen Xers, and the younger millennials 10 years ago, had no problem putting up Pride merchandise, the younger generation now coming in, and our generation now getting more and more money, we're rejecting it all. Yeah. And it's hitting their bottom line really hard.
I mean, I'm thrilled that it seems to have met a tipping point where like they can no longer just to continue to shove this garbage down our throats. And it's not a moment too soon. I'm just curious to see like how bottomless is the ESG well? How many resources can the BlackRock, State Street, Vanguard, central banking cabal, align to support these institutions that have ultimately been doing what Larry Fink demanded of them? Larry Fink for years has been demanding that every single business that he's going to give $1 to implement this type of nonsense. So if they turn around and then abandon them, well, then all of the other corporations that are witnessing that have to say to themselves, oh, it doesn't matter if we play by the rules. If the consumer turns against us, ultimately they're the power broker here.
I was saying this, I think it was when I was talking to Vivek Ramaswamy, that the Bud Light thing happened because it's a millennial woman who gets this high role in marketing and then says, we go woke. But I think what I missed at that period when I was saying, yeah, the wokeness is not like, it's not that people who work in these companies are becoming woke. It's that woke people are now getting jobs in these companies. What I didn't catch was the consumers don't care or want this stuff. And so the infiltrators will come into the institutions, implement these policies. It'll work for a little bit. And then once the other side of the coin, the consumer comes in, they reject all of those things, and those institutions begin to fail.
I sure hope, man. I think that's the only way forward, is that Anheuser-Busch, not just Bud Light in terms of a brand, but Anheuser-Busch has to be devastated by this decision.
I mean,
especially since it's an institutional American company. It's been around forever, right? To see that fall apart because of these decisions made by someone at that level who was hired is extremely symbolic.
But understand this. We have seen Bud Light sales drop precipitously over the past 2 months. And it's looking like it's bottoming out. Mm-hmm. It's not. When the boycott first started, we're talking April 1st, Dylan Mulvaney does this video. Then you get sales dropping by single digits, double digits, and now nearly 30%. It's Memorial Day weekend. It's May. It's summer. So what's actually happening is there is a spike in Bud Light sales. Bud Light sales are actually going way up. That happens every summer.
Oh, right.
Spring into summer, people are buying more and more beer, grilling, hanging out outside. If we're seeing it still going down from last week to this week, only a couple points, if this was a normal year with no boycott, you would actually see an inverse picture of the sales leveling and then spiking in May. So my point here is, if it were not for the boycott, their sales would be up double digits. The fact their sales are only down a couple percent means, in spite of the summer months hitting and Memorial Day weekend, people celebrating holidays, their sales are still dropping. after this summer, I think it's going to drop a lot harder.
Yeah, no, I think you're exactly right. And this video has gone viral. It actually is a couple months old. I remember I tweeted it out, but it has been going viral again over the past 48 hours where Larry Fink, who's the CEO of BlackRock, $9 trillion under management, insane, is being interviewed. And he's talking about forcing behaviors, quote unquote, forcing behaviors. We have to force behaviors. And what he's not just implying, but saying overtly is that we will force these companies to do away with their fiduciary responsibility to their shareholders because we are bigger than the shareholder. We are ultimately the only thing that matters. It's not your consumers. It's not your mom and pop shareholders. It's not your employees. It's none of that matters. It's the big financial arms at the end of the day that get to dictate your behavior. And that is their worldview as to why this has been implemented, is that they were going to force behaviors like implementing diversity, equity, inclusion in brands that were extraordinarily masculine historically, which makes no effing sense whatsoever. But they started with Gillette, and then they just worked down the line, and finally, the American people have had enough. Thank God.
Well, look at Disney and what's going on with Disney, or even Marvel. This happened to Marvel like 8 years longer than this has been going on here when we talk about woke women who end up in middle management positions and then start pushing ideas onto these companies that don't jive with your audience.
Right.
Yes, exactly. But Marvel, a brand that has a strong market in the average middle-aged American male, and they'll always be able to sell comics to them, but they're always looking for the mythical, the mythical new demographic that's going to somehow magically expand their consumer base, right? And it never works out that way because that's not how that type of business works, at least not in a creative sense. You can't start selling these things in a sense that it doesn't feel authentic, and it doesn't come across authentic because it doesn't match with the rest of the brand. Right. And remember, they're owned by Disney, so it doesn't even matter. So it's a funny microcosm because Marvel Comics is a rounding error to a company like Disney. The movies obviously are enormous, but the comics are a rounding error. True. Because it's such a smaller brand nowadays because so many less people are actually buying physical comics. And for them, now you look at the movies and like what Tim was saying about things bottoming out, I think The Little Mermaid, for instance, is made like 120 million in its opening weekend, but when you count for inflation, it's far below what it would have been just a couple of years ago, obviously before inflation skyrocketed back upwards. Mm-hmm. And that's another example of what it is. You get people in middle management companies, middle management positions at these companies, and they start pushing these agendas, whether it is DEI or in a lot of cases for this stuff, they're just telling them look, this is good marketing. This is where we want to go. BlackRock and all of these companies obviously agreed. They think, why wouldn't this be a good idea? Well, it doesn't jive with the brand, just like it doesn't with Bud Light, just like it doesn't with Gillette. And we see evidence over and over again that it's not working, but they keep doing it. And that's the hard part for me.
So what happens? Do they find the millennial who is not someone who grew up with wokeism and is in middle management and swap them in, or do we have to wait for the newest generation of middle management to rise up and graduate and finally get to these
both.
corporations?
You have actual, comics like Eric July's ISOM, which is trying to create a competitor to Marvel. I have no idea if he'll be successful. Obviously, I'm rooting for him because he comes from my ideological camp. But there's going to be a lot of competition that tries to replace some of these Goliaths. But the problem is that you can't get financing at the highest levels to compete with these guys. Because if you want that financing, you have to do the same crazy stuff to compete. So you have to go DEI, you have to go ESG. So the only way you can compete is to be someone like Tim Pool or Ben Shapiro, Daily Wire. You have to get capital from other people that are already successful, telling the truth and bucking the woke trend. And you guys have to combine your resources and then use your platforms to compete. It's very challenging. That's why people get it totally wrong when they go, well, if this was so bad, then all of these companies would go bankrupt. No, they exist still because there's no competition. Because ESG is a tool to create and harness and inculcate the oligopoly that exists. That's why you don't see competition. And this is why ultimately there ought to be anti-competitive investigations into this entire operation, because as far as I'm concerned, it's got to be criminal on multiple levels.
But there probably never will be.
Because they own all the politicians. Yeah. Yes.
And then aliens will be announced again, and we'll just forget all about it.
I'm telling you, if we hold out long enough, they'll tell us some real secrets.
I really want to know where Hoffa's buried. Can we just hold out for that?
Yeah. Keep putting pressure on the Biden situation to find out about Hoffa.
They have to confirm every single conspiracy theory before they admit that Joe Biden's crooked.
Yeah.
It's like, oh man, do we have any conspiracy theories left? We've already admitted to everything.
So the frogs are being turned gay.
and there are eight subfloors under the Denver airport. All of the good stuff.
That's where Hoffa is, under the Denver airport. That's what I heard.
Yeah. No,
Denver airport one really gets me because they're
Weren't we
like
just talking about this the other day?
I've been thinking about it for a little while. It got introduced to me and now I can't stop. I was talking about it on PCC on Friday.
Yeah.
I love that they were like, we have a working airport, but we'll build this really expensive one with a baggage shipping situation that actually we don't need. Like, the city of Denver should be irate if they just wasted all this money on an airport, which everyone I know who lives in Denver is like, we hate driving through the Denver airport to pick people up. Like,
and how does a story like
what
that
is
not
this?
turn into a conspiracy theory? We built this massive place underneath the airport and then decided, no,
we're just not
using
going
it.
to use it. Like,
No.
no one is mad about that? Interesting.
I like it.
I like the paintings.
Oh, yeah?
You've seen the paintings at Denver Airport?
Oh, yeah.
So creepy.
Yeah, they
Yeah.
are.
And then the
May-
horse that killed its artist, and then they put it up
that's
anyway.
crazy. With the glowing eyes or whatever, the giant blue horse.
Called Lucifer, right? That's his name.
the horse?
I don't know. That's what one video on the internet told me, so it's definitely not.
Well, then it must be true.
Yes.
Somebody say to Seamus, like the other day, they said, isn't there a painting of Lucifer in the Vatican? And he's like, I don't know about that. We don't like that guy.
Yeah, but maybe it's like a painting of like him in a bad position.
Yeah, it's like, or maybe it's like they're supposed to go there every day and you're supposed to look at him because you're fighting him.
Wag his
Like,
finger.
Yeah,
Wag your
Spit
finger
on
on
him.
me.
that makes
a
sense.
bad painting.
That seems unhygienic to me to spit on him every
Look,
day.
it was a different time. That was pre-COVID. They were like, it's cool. Everybody, it's like kissing the Blarney Stone in Ireland. Like, I bet you couldn't do that during COVID.
Well, definitely not. I just think it's funny. Like they didn't admit the Epstein thing. It just sort of came true.
Yeah.
Right.
You know, it's like, oh.
Well, and it's bizarre because we get like 80% truths, but we never get 100%. Because if it was 100%, you'd get prosecutions and convictions of all of his clients, as well as Fauci, as well as the Biden family. Like, so we just get enough to like basically subdue us and go like, oh, we're not crazy. We actually had all this right, but all of the people that are responsible, they still don't go to jail.
Yeah.
You also want to know how they moved on Epstein. If you look up, there's about 3 Epstein documentaries out there between Hulu and the other services. All of the pictures, him and Trump.
Oh, right.
They're all- or if you look up him on Google, like if you look up Epstein on Google Images, it's like the first 5 that come up are pictures of like, it's like edited photos of him. Like they're real, but it's like one zoomed in,
Yeah,
one's
it's
far
the
away.
same photo
It's the
over and
same
over
photo
again
over and
to
over
make it
again.
seem like there's a lot.
If that's not big tech propaganda, and oof.
How pissed must Elon be? Apparently, he said he was like at a party, and then someone was like, "I'm gonna get a picture," and then Ghislaine Maxwell walked up and stood next to him. I think that's what his story was. Like he was just standing there, and then Ghislaine was standing there too, and they both got a picture, and he doesn't really know her. But now all they do is post this picture of him and Maxwell.
Well, I've only just recently had people asking for photos with me, and so this is a totally new phenomenon. But at any libertarian party event, I'll have a dozen people
Because you're
per
super
event.
cool. I get you.
Yeah, exactly. Because I'm unbelievably cool, and dudes with beards that don't have wives like me a lot. So
What a fun demographic.
So I'll have like a dozen people per event, and I'm just thinking to myself, like, I bet one of these guys is going to go on to be like a mass murderer, and then this picture is going to get dragged up, because I'm thinking like, Elon's one of the most famous people on earth. He must take pictures with tens of thousands of people.
Yep.
Like, of course, there's going to be some lunatic that he's taking a photo with, or some child sex trafficking. Maybe that's more rare, but I
Not
think
in the
it's
circles
bizarre.
he runs in, though.
Yeah,
No offense to him.
Yeah, exactly. Well, I've been the highest level of money and power, yes, but I just think it's bizarre that we're like, just because of a photo now, especially for famous people, you're like, oh, you're probably a devil worshiper.
You
I'm
are
like,
probably best friends with this person who you took a picture with. That's what I'm going to assume. Anytime someone takes a
Yes,
picture with
exactly.
you, they have known you personally, been to your home.
yes.
I
Best man at my wedding.
just think weird things come out later and they sort of are like, oh yeah, of course. Like my example of this always is the Greenbrier Resort in Southern West Virginia. Beautiful, owned by Jim Justice's family. It's huge. Has a bunker that's declassified under it where they were going to take Congress in the event of a nuclear disaster. And eventually they were like, we're going to declassify this one. So they built, obviously that means they built one somewhere else. So why can't the Denver airport have something sketchy underneath, right?
Just turn it
and
into like an
later
Airbnb.
they'll let you know, they'll declassify the Denver airport and you'll have to wonder where the next one is.
I like it.
I don't like it. I wish they would just stop. But
But it kind of makes life a little bit more exciting.
oh, I get it. It's so much fun. There was one girl.
The horse is Lucifer.
Lucifer.
For real?
I don't know. Someone look it up. So someone said.
No,
I don't want to look
it's
it up.
colloquially called Lucifer because it
Awesome.
killed its artist, and I think there's another reason. I think it's just called like the Mustang.
That's
I'm pretty sure it's called
I don't
Mustang.
believe it. I'm sticking with the Lucifer story.
All right, everybody, we're going to go to Super Chats. If you haven't already, would you kindly smash that like button, subscribe to this channel, share this show with your friends, and become a member at timcast.com. We're going to have that members-only uncensored show coming up for you. And, I just want to point something out. We've been doing shorts on this channel. We had one about Gen Z. It's got 1 million hits in the past, 2 million hits in the past 2 days, 1 million hits per day for the past 2 days. And it's crazy. I'm watching it now, and it's insanely viral. It's like the weirdest thing ever. The way that YouTube's promoting shorts over like the actual show is kind of a bummer. But it's like 2 million views. I'll take it, I guess.
It'll still suck in new viewers for you, so.
That's a good thing, I guess.
Yeah.
We had one that just hit 3 million, over a longer period of time, obviously on a much smaller channel. But it's like it gained it's really funny because it gains like a certain amount of subscribers. But you have to worry then like people that are looking for short form content aren't necessarily the ones that are there to watch like a 2-hour podcast every day.
True.
And it's really funny because it's never the ones you think. It's like every day, like when I'm editing the show, I'm like, oh, that'll be great. Like this clip's gonna go. Like it's never that one. It's always the most boring, bland one. That's just like it's just the most milquetoast take I've ever had.
But do you think that's because YouTube is like, it's okay to push this one?
I mean, it was the one ours. It was Mary talking about Jenna Ortega, and that was right around the time. But this was like a month after Wednesday was really, really popular, right? So why that time period, right? Why didn't this happen when it was much more liable to be in the search, in the algorithm as people looking for the content?
They were like, it's the least spicy take.
You got to do the thumbnails where you like Photoshop your eyes to be really big and then have like Mary with fake tears coming out, and it's like shocking pop culture crisis episode.
We'll have to do that.
Yeah, then that's how you get it. All right, let's read some super chats. Grofty says, Buck. Okay, that's a fantastic super chat. Austin Thomas says, Tim, any mobile app update will buy $10 membership. The Android, I think they're both done. Android and iOS are done. Apple is really hard to get on Apple. So they're supposed to call us, and they didn't. So I have no idea what's going on.
Android's just like, we'll let anyone in here.
Yeah, Android, it's like you fill out the form, you say, like, I certify this, and then it goes up. And I think they're just fixing a few bugs, but it should be going up very soon. Everything just takes 400,000 times longer to do when it's being handed off to other people. That's just the way companies work, I guess. My mentality is just do it. Like, just do it. But then it's like every time I ask, like, where are we at? Like, it'll be another 3 weeks. And I'm like, but why? I just don't understand. That's just me. I don't do programming. I don't know. But for some reason, I'm told a month ago the app is done. Everything's working great. And then a month later, it's like, it's not up. And I'm like, I don't know. No idea. I just kind of feel like I get so much done in a day that I don't understand how other people don't.
Yeah. Well, it seems like a microcosm of the broader economy. It's like I've been building 6 houses for the past 3 years or 5 years now, and it's been hell. You can't get anyone to work. I know Tim's been dealing with this with the coffee shop, et cetera, et cetera. It's weird, man. I don't know how this economy is still standing.
I think it's also that we have like set goals. Like we have things that have to come out every day. So it's like if it doesn't get done, people are going to notice if it doesn't get done.
Yeah, but they should have those same.
You'd think they would hold themselves to the same standard, right?
Yeah. But haven't you like noticed also in like restaurants too? Like people just don't care about providing like general service for you. Like people just don't. They're like really. It's like after the pandemic, people just slacked.
Every service industry has like been degraded. Everything has.
They
been
close
degraded.
at 10
The
p.m.
service
now.
industry workers are like, you need us more than we need you.
Right.
There's a plethora of jobs for them. They
Very true.
need to hold on to their staff. You
Yeah.
can't ask them to be nicer.
All right. Noah Electricity, that's a good one, says, walked in and out of Walmart today in Louisiana, greeted by 5 3x5 rainbow flags straddling the U.S. flag, decided they didn't need my money. Oh, good for you, man. Here. You should also very politely say, I disagree with the symbolism that you're displaying here, and because of it, I will be leaving. Please relay my complaint to your superiors.
I just want everyone to tweet their Walmart pride displays at me. Because I've been to like multiple Walmarts recently searching for a helium tank, and I didn't see any. But again,
No
I'm in
Pride
West
stuff?
Virginia. I saw one like tiny cardboard stand with like those glow sticks, and I thought they weren't related to Pride. And then there were like a couple things, but no flags or anything like that.
I don't think I saw any over here at the one closer to here. I don't think I saw any.
No, that's what I mean. I feel like, I wonder if it's like you're going to one near a major city. So they're like, we got to play it up.
Yeah.
All right, let's get some more super chats. Bellyflop says, in the past years, I've heard you and Jimmy Dore wonder why YouTube hasn't removed y'all. Maybe they've kept you on because you work as a reactionary thermometer for the socialist corporation's evil doings. I've not wondered it. I've explained for years exactly what they're doing. They need a channel like ours to serve as the new right. So when conservatives, who are right-wing, as the wheel rotates and right-wing becomes far-right, centrist becomes right, liberal becomes centrist, they need liberals to now be the conservatives. If they ban all the people on the right and then we're the only ones left, they then say, look, where are the right wingers at? It's only that one channel. They're the only ones. That's what conservative means. And you end up with, there's this leaked audio from some fundraiser for DeSantis where a donor said something like, DeSantis should move towards moderate on abortion and say safe, legal, and rare, which is the traditional Democrat position. That's the purpose. You rotate the wheel you've got left, liberal, centrist, conservative, far right, and they want to rotate the wheel and make the far left the left. That way they can go to you and say, well, you're a liberal, right? Yes. Okay. So you must agree with all this child sex change stuff, which used to be very fringe. That's the point.
Yeah.
The Moen 22 says the FBI wants to remove Biden before the next election so the Democrats have a chance at winning. I wouldn't be surprised.
Just put a sandbag in front of him.
Well, who are they going to run if they take out Biden? Because they don't like RFK and no one likes Kamala, although they haven't needed a likable president before.
Yeah,
I know, I've heard he's
Newsom.
exploring it.
Yeah.
I swear
What
to
do we
God, I
got?
will leave America if Gavin Newsom.
It's like I can't
is the
escape
president.
this guy. I left California. I gotta wait.
Somebody
cannot
clip that. I
exist.
just want to see
Now,
Clint
look,
move to Canada.
I have to leave.
Consider. I would normally say I don't believe it, except for the fact that El Salvador exists.
Yeah, I'm in El Salvador. Before he is even inaugurated, I'm out of here. People need to understand, Gavin Newsom is a lunatic.
Yeah.
Look at me in my eyes. 35 years in the state of California, most beautiful, blossoming, economic, the beautiful people, the surfing, the beach volleyball. It's the greatest place on earth. Gavin Newsom in freaking a couple years just destroyed the entire state. Don't ever make him your president, America. I'm begging you, don't make him the president. Please.
Please.
I feel like you're a refugee.
You know, libertarians benefited the most from Bitcoin because Bitcoin comes out and then like all the moderates, conservatives, liberal types, regular people are just like, I don't know about this Bitcoin thing. And then the libertarians were like, it's money that the government can't track. Yes, I'll take all of it. And now there's a whole bunch of, anarcho-libertarian types who are just millionaires and billionaires.
Yeah, and I think that's where El Salvador could be heading, unless the IMF and the economic hitmen take out Bukele, or however you pronounce his name.
Bukele?
Bukele, yeah.
I think it's Bukele. All right, what do we got? Horsehead says, Tim, I listened via podcast to The Daily Show. Lately, you've only been getting frequent Febreze can't cancel Pride ads. Yeah, those are when we have programmatic ads. It's just, they put in whatever. But same thing's true for YouTube. When I was ragging on Michael Bloomberg, I had a whole bunch of Bloomberg ads running on the channel. And it's like, that's exactly where he should advertise. He wants to put his ads to counter the negative narrative. So, or maybe not. I have no idea. Whatever. I'll take his money.
Maybe Bloomberg will run again.
That's true.
Just
Joe
another
Spinella.
soulless billionaire.
Joe Spinell says organized crime used to be a private entity. Government eliminated the competition.
That's 100% true.
It's just un-American.
The mob was replaced by the central bankers.
Yeah. Who we didn't get in trouble for anything they did in 2008 for the subprime lending mortgage.
Right.
They just did the same thing again?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Raymond G. Stanley Jr. says, Tim, why are Chicago residents upset over spending $51 million out of the total $102 million, and that's just for June alone, to take care of the needs of their illegal aliens? They're a sanctuary city, after all. I know, it's so strange. Why are they upset? Look, man, they vote for the same thing over and over again. Supermajorities for 100 years. You'd think they'd learn, but they do not.
I think a lot of it is just a lot of people. They go to vote, and I didn't think this was a thing, but this is a thing. People go, they don't know who to vote for, and they just check the D.
Yeah,
they
totally.
really do,
Totally.
and it's crazy because I really think
just
that
want the D.
They should, yes, exactly. They should remove.
can't help it.
They should remove.
Irresistible to them.
They should remove party affiliation from all
I agree.
voting. Absolutely,
Yeah,
should be
they
removing
definitely
party
should.
The
affiliation.
D is irresistible.
But I think that's
For people in Chicago, yes, the D
But
is
these people
irresistible.
don't know better. It's irresponsible. They were, people who are not involved in politics. They are completely uneducated on the issues, and they crave the D. Why are you laughing?
I don't know.
This is a serious podcast. Could you stop?
Somebody like if some politician doesn't use that as their campaign slogan, they are making a mistake. They're missing out.
I crave the biggest D imaginable.
Or the L? That's even worse, actually.
Yes.
I want the L. No,
Give me
no.
the biggest of L's.
It'd be. No,
And then when you say you want the
L.
W, you get Bush, and then it's just like none of it works.
No.
It would be take the L.
The T.
Yes.
It would be take the L.
Vote Libertarian. Take the L.
Republicans like Republicans like the T.
Yeah.
The T?
The T. You know, the T. You know, Trump.
My brain's off. It's like Tea Party. That's a thing still. I didn't know that was a thing.
I was like testosterone replacement therapy. I was going all sorts of different
Democrats. Republicans want the T, man. What do we got here? Dominic Camerata says, Tim, aliens do nothing for religion. We already know they are simply demons. Keep up the good work.
How would you already know that?
Well, you know.
You haven't even met them. You don't know.
There was
Have an open mind.
There was a great part in an episode of Doctor Who where they talk about this lady who was religious, and then when alien life was realized, it kind of crushed her because she's been a Christian her whole life, and it was like science basically telling you you're wrong.
I feel like the Scientologists and the Mormons got out in front of this.
wait.
We're going to incorporate other planets into our stuff.
I think actually this might be a good strategy for Republicans to convince younger male voters not to vote Democrat by actually embracing Democrats and asking young male voters if they crave the D. And really, don't you want to just go and vote and just stamp the D and
Just gorge yourself on D.
They're going to be like, no, I don't want to do that. I don't want to do that.
You do. Yes, you do. That's what your demographic votes. You always crave the D, don't you?
Look, we've always said the Republicans need to step up their ground game. If this is the way to do it.
You knock on doors and be like, I'm wondering if you crave the D.
And they're so much better than the Republicans at actually going door to door. I never get any Republican Republican committees coming to my door. So if I get some dude who comes to the house, is like, so do you crave the D?
Jack Black is listening right now. And he's like, you son of a...
Knock, knock. Would you open your heart for the D today?
John Alaska, this so I can make a lot worse jokes, but I'm going to read on. John Alaska says, guys, are we trusting the FBI now? They leaked to get rid of Trump. Now they're leaking that he is trying to kill whistleblowers. Doesn't have to be true. Just said enough. They didn't say that Biden was going to do. They said they're worried he'll get killed by somebody.
Look, I'm not.
Do you think they're implying on any level, like, because he didn't come forward sooner, crazy conservatives would kill this whistleblower? Like, what kind of twisted narrative are they presenting here?
If that's,
they're like, no, it's us. We're going to do it. We don't want to do it.
We won't release him if we have to.
Yeah, they're like, if you tell people who it is, we have to.
His blood is on your hands. Like, I don't know what to tell you.
Have you looked at our track record? Do you know what we're capable of? You're going to whistleblow against the FBI? Are you out of your effing
We're
mind?
just telling you now,
warning.
it's a terrible idea for everyone involved.
It's not a warning. It's a threat.
Yeah, for
They
real.
didn't tell Anna Paulina Luna. They didn't say that they were scared, as in like, we're scared. They were scared, and I'm afraid I'll have to do it.
Yes, exactly.
Just they're afraid it's going to get
I'll
killed.
make you a deal you can't refuse.
She did say afraid, I'm pretty sure, too, right?
I'll pull the tweet.
Yeah. All right. What do we got? D99 says, Kentucky Ballistics uploaded a new video of the 4-bore rifle versus body armor. Give it a watch. That sounds very interesting. I'd like to
4-bore.
watch that. Kentucky Ballistics. Let me write that down.
That's probably massive.
Yes, the FBI is afraid their informant will be killed in mass. Sorry, with this. It's so funny.
There's an episode
he will be
We're
killed.
afraid that he may have to go sleep with the fishes.
There's an
Based on the
episode
information
of
he's brought forward about the Biden family.
There's
We're
an
afraid.
episode of the X-Files where the cigarette smoking man is like listening to a speech of Martin Luther King, and then he says something that he knows he's like, oh God, now I got to go and take this dude out. He's upset about it. He's like, I don't want to, but it's my job. I have to go do it.
The FBI doesn't want to either.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying. They don't.
The House oversight is forcing their hand.
A lot of people will think that RFK Jr. is a non-starter for the D, because of the war in Ukraine, or because of the his vaccine hesitancy pitch that he's had for years and years. Ultimately, I think that the reason he's a real non-starter is because he wants to abolish and disband the CIA and the FBI. Like that is so ballsy. I can't tell you how courageous and incredible of a stand that is to take and to run in either duopoly side. It's amazing to
It
witness.
also works for DeSantis.
But is he really running on that though?
Craving the D. I'm saying craving the D works for DeSantis too.
Yeah, it does.
Oh, that's true.
Yeah, you just go
Are you
around
craving the D? Like,
Are you for DeSantis?
You
Do you
can't.
crave the
You
D?
can't say gay in Florida, but you can crave the D.
That's right.
Yeah.
Everyone's gonna be like,
He's
no,
Florida's big
no,
D. I don't know what to tell
no,
you.
I'm voting for Trump. I'm voting for Trump.
I want the big T, not the big D. This is all so confusing.
All right. Bobcat says, Hannah Claire, have you finished those movies yet?
I don't know what you're talking about. There aren't. No, I haven't finished.
There's a
them.
new one. That's even more nice.
I know.
You were supposed to go to us with the theater.
No, I wasn't.
Yes, if you said if you did
You
not
showed
finish,
up at my desk 10 minutes before
No,
you left.
I'm saying like you originally said if I don't finish all of them before the 10th one comes out, we're talking about the Fast and Furious
Yes,
movies.
I have to watch the Fast and Furious movie because a podcast that I go on sometimes made a wager, and now I have to
you
suffer the
agreed to
consequences.
the wager. That's
I don't even know that I did.
You
I totally
agreed
did.
to the
I also-
wager.
but to be
I
fair,
dyed my hair blonde
Yes,
for
that's
that,
why I have to honor
okay?
this. I started this thing where they would reach like certain levels of crisis parties, and it started with Brett bleaching his hair, but then they up the ante on me, and I have to watch all of the Fast and the Furious movies, which I don't want to.
You've never seen one?
No. Okay, so there was a while I was doing a really good job. I got this challenge like 6 months ago, and there was one night I watched like 2 or 3 just to like knock them out, but then I think I'm on 5 or 6, and I don't want to keep going.
And every time
No, they go to outer space.
And every time she gets
Why?
done
I
with
don't
one,
understand.
I'm like, oh, the next one's the best.
Yes, everyone says that to me. I think this is like the thing where when people have kids, they're like, oh, but having 2 is harder. Oh, having 3 is, or having 4 is harder. Like every time I finish Fast and Furious movie, there's someone who's like, no, but the next one is the best
They
one.
keep getting better.
Tim
They
always
do
just,
get better.
Like wine.
It's just important.
age.
It's
You don't
important.
drink
I disagree with you on that one. I think
bit
9 is the
sometimes.
weakest of all of them. I think 9 is the weakest.
Five-
So that's where they went to space.
Yeah, but the self-referential humor is too over the top. That's just my personal opinion.
I also feel like Brett is like not making this fun for me. Every time he's just like, you do it. And there's no
I do,
like
the
making
people in the
popcorn.
chat.
There's no group activity. I'm just supposed to sit alone and find a streaming service,
You
which
have
I
to-
don't have access
you
to.
have to-
All right, hold on,
it's
hold on,
spread
hold
out over
on.
like 4 of them.
Problem solved. Friday, starting at noon, we will begin a Fast and the Furious watch party.
Hell yeah.
I can't do Friday, but if you want to do it next Friday, I'm in.
Not this Friday, but next Friday.
Yeah, and I'll do them all. I will stay there and watch them all until they're done.
key-
Then
The
we'll
key-
start. We'll do a full day. We'll start at 9 a.m.
But I'm gonna but I either am not working or I'm gonna come in at the movie that I have reached.
The key to enjoying the Fast and Furious franchise is to crave the Vin D soul.
That's exactly right.
I just
Crave the D.
there was that one like in Tokyo Drift. There's like this weird incestuous implication that I don't like. Like I just don't get these movies.
we're talking about family.
The reason
But
it's
in
so
a weird
great,
way.
the reason it's so great, and I realized this in the 10th one, the reason it's so great is because everybody else is acting like it's absurd because it's absurd.
Yeah.
And Vin Diesel just takes it, he just plays
full-
it
it's
completely
totally
straight.
serious.
Yeah, he plays it straight.
He's just, and that's what allows you to buy into it. It's absolutely ridiculous and over the top, but it's a ton of
He plays
fun.
himself.
It's a modern masterpiece, and people are totally asleep on that entire
agree. I'm
series.
with you,
It's
man.
phenomenal.
I'm 100% asleep. I'm the opposite of woke on Fast and the Furious. I don't know what
He's
to
like,
tell
I
you.
took an Ambien. That's how far.
There were
that's how
like
asleep I am.
moments that I'll report to her. Like I think I might understand. No, I don't. I don't understand. I take notes. Like
It just gets more and more far fetched as they progress. It's so good.
It's amazing.
all right. We'll read some more. Paulius Deneris says, I know someone high up at Walmart's marketing, and they mentioned that everyone is freaking out over the boycotts and marketing teams walking on eggshells. Can't agree on marketing strategies.
Great. They should walk on eggshells all the time.
It's so weird though because it's such an easy dodge. Just stop politicizing everything you do. But apparently that's not that
I
easy.
thought of a really good ad for Bud Light that they could have done instead of Dylan Mulvaney. Get this. It's like a mountain, right? In the background. And there's a can of Bud Light just like there in front of you. And it says America's beer. And that's it. That's the whole ad.
We can't talk about America. It's so controversial. Some people don't like it here.
Okay. All right. Fair point. So let's
says
just say
beer.
it's a blue tinted background with like a outline of I'm just imagining it's like a mountain, blue background. So it's not like a clear picture. It's like, just like art. And there's a picture of a Bud Light can and it just says ice cold beer. That's it.
I think you could go that way, or you can go over the top the other direction where you're like, America, guns, God, Donald Trump, Bud Light.
But they,
Yeah, no.
they tried the
My point
Clydesdale
is-
thing right after, and people got more
Right.
mad at
My
them.
point
really?
is,
Oh, yeah.
Bud Light doesn't need marketing. They could literally just put a picture of a can of Bud Light. to remind people
Right.
it exists.
Yeah, then that's
all
true.
they had to do.
This was my like I said this a couple times. Not that they should have used Dylan Mulvaney, but they have Bud Light Seltzer, which they're constantly trying to push because it's not the most well-known hard seltzer out there.
This
so
would've
if
been
they
great.
needed to promote a product, the one that people are not as familiar with would have made sense. Their classic blue Bud Light can is the stupidest thing to try and be like, you know what we need to reinvent? The wheel.
And then like directly calling out their like primary buyers, like saying, "Oh, it's too much of a frat beer. We don't like that." All
right.
It was amazing.
Let's read another one we got. Sean, he says, UFOs not BS, Tim. I saw a UFO 17 years ago in East Texas. It was a black diamond the size of a car silently hovering above a field in front of my house for a few minutes before shooting straight up like a bullet. I believe you. Because we've heard a lot of those stories. But there's a simple explanation. There was a story I read about, it was like recently, naval pilots saying they saw, unexplained aerial phenomena, or anomalous phenomena or whatever. And they were like, these weird vehicles were hovering near them, the shape of Tic Tacs, and they were like darting around. And then it passively mentions, like later in the article, that it was 70 miles away from an experimental U.S. weapons facility.
Right.
And I'm like, oh, okay. Like, so tell me more stories about how the U.S. is making new weapons. I don't know.
But in truth, like, can you ever get more than 70 miles away from an experimental U.S. DARPA facility in America?
Perhaps not.
Yeah, I'm not sure.
We can't say.
But the
I could tell you, but I'd have
Tell me
the
about
base
Denver
was
Airport
actually,
first.
it was an experimental like aerospace technologies facility.
Yeah.
So what?
Yeah, then you'd probably lean towards that being.
Right.
And the other thing too is we think about these UFOs, these discs. I'm kind of surprised quad rotor drones have only become prominent recently. It's not that difficult a concept to have 4 propellers, just in counterclockwise, clockwise.
I assume it has to do with
Computers.
I was thinking that they didn't have enough battery capacity to actually give enough juice to the propellers.
You can do it with gas.
But then if that's the case, then you have to have combustion engine of some sort that weighs a lot more. So wouldn't that be?
They definitely can do it.
Well, I know they can now, but I'm saying
No,
that's
they
why.
could definitely do it back then too.
Oh, okay.
Like look at a helicopter.
Well, that's true. Yeah.
Right. They could easily do quad rotors. They had like a flying platform that used like a single fan.
Right.
But my point is like when we see these UFOs, like it very well could have just been early quad rotor technology. I mean, we had helicopters. We're experimenting with
That's
this stuff.
true. Yeah.
And then people see it and they're like, at first they're like, it's aliens.
Yeah.
Because they didn't want to say it's weapons technology we're working on.
The one thing that puts me, because as I've already made very clear, I believe that aliens exist and I believe they're probably visiting us. However, how is it even possible with all of the HD cameras that exist everywhere, CCTV, yada, yada, yada? I still can't get one clean shot of these sons of bitches.
So-
It's like
where are they at?
It's the Mitch Hedberg scene. He goes, I think Bigfoot is blurry. He's like, and that's way scarier. There's a large, out of focus monster roaming the countryside.
That's
a good one.
fantastic.
Funny thing to know is that like all of the U.S. testing for like I guess aerospace technology has to take place offshore because of the sonic booms taking place over U.S. soil. So they made sure to take off offshore, and then on top of that, that's why we wouldn't see them anywhere
That makes
except
sense.
offshore.
Yeah,
So-
yeah,
There was a sonic boom in D.C.
Yeah.
Oh,
Was
today.
That was today, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, because someone flew a single engine Cessna or something
Right.
over D.C.
Crazy.
And so they scrambled fighter jets.
Wow.
Crazy.
I just kept thinking about vampires when you were giving this explanation. Like, why can't you see them? Why can't you see photos of them? Maybe because they don't photograph. We don't know. We don't know what these creatures are capable of.
I thought you were tying it back into my Gavin Newsom rant, and I was like, "You're right. He could
That's
be a
true, too.
vampire. Anything's possible." That man, look at me in the eyes, America. He has destroyed the greatest place on earth. Do not cast a vote for Gavin Newsom.
But
if you care about your children, don't do it. He's the most dangerous man on the planet. Do you hear me?
Fantastic for tent sales, though.
All right, what do we got here?
I'm sorry. I really don't like
Sales?
Gavin.
Question mark.
Giving it away.
Just Say Something says, I really hate this myth that people can't afford to buy houses these days. I have 2 boys, 24 and 25, who both own houses. Modern day expectations are the only thing stopping you. Renting is just cognitive dissonance. I think the issue is people want to live in cities that have high costs, high crime. There are houses out in West Virginia that are, I would call them fixer-uppers, but livable. And they're like $100,000. And so I know a lot of people are like, where am I supposed to get $100,000? Like, you don't. You get like, you save a
mortgage.
2,
Yeah.
Even, and then get a mortgage. And then you're paying interest at the bank for sure, but you're actually saving some of the value that you're putting into your mortgage every month, and you're building wealth.
Yep.
Better than paying rent where it just goes away.
I mean, but this is also part of like why we no longer live around our families, because so many of the people that, like, speaking for myself, almost no one I knew that I grew up with stayed in San Diego, even though all of their families stayed there because they owned houses that increased in value by 3x over their lifetimes, and the kids all couldn't afford to buy a house there, so they all migrate away. They start a family elsewhere, and then we lament the fact that our culture doesn't look after our elders. It's like, well, this is a product of the inflation that's created by the central banks, but I have to. It takes more than 10 seconds to explain, so no one wants to hear it.
Yeah, true.
That's so true.
More than 10 seconds. Brandizzle says, pride comes before the fall. Truer words have never been said.
True. Maybe it's chronological in our season.
But I think
system.
pride, was it pride cometh before the fall? What if it wasn't an analogy, or that's not the right way to explain it. That's not what it is. What if it wasn't descriptive, it was prescriptive? Like, what if they weren't saying, on average, pride comes before the fall? What if they were literally saying, in the United States, in the year 2023, there's going to be this big thing called pride. And then a few years later, the country, what if he was literally predicting something?
Yeah.
Pride month is in June. Fall is starting in what? Late August, September? So technically it does come before the fall all the time.
Ooh.
It already does that.
That's all they were
It's
saying.
totally benign.
Yeah, it was totally benign. It was
They're
like,
just trying to figure out when to schedule Pride Month. And they're like, before fall.
oh, man.
It's hard to have parades in winter. They were just like before fall.
That could turn out, you know.
What do we got? Nathan C says, think about how all the lefties get triggered by words and how the media trains them to be. CNN and MSNBC use MK Ultra tactics. That explains the left. And they believe it over and over and over again. R. Levis says, really worried about the hero worship of RFK. It's like people on the right forgot his last several decades of calling gun owners terrorists and wanting to gulag people over global warming.
Can I respond to that? I haven't forgotten, for the record. But he has also said, now granted, this could be him shifting more to the center to try and appeal to people like me, but he has made it very clear that based off of his experience with the lockdowns and the massive state apparatus that tried to deal with the pandemic, that he is now no longer in favor of any sort of government solutions towards climate change. He believes that innovation is the only path forward. That's what he says.
Yeah.
You don't buy it? You don't buy it?
It's not so much about whether I buy it. It's like, oh, how convenient.
That's fair. But I think he was starting to already sound that way during the lockdowns, not when he was running for president. So I don't know. We'll find out.
We will find out. But for now, smash that like button, subscribe to this channel, share the show with your friends. Head over to timcast.com, click join us, become a member, because the members only uncensored show will be starting in just a few minutes, and you don't want to miss it. We got some big stories to talk about. It's going to be very, very good. So again, go to timcast.com. You can also smash the like button, share the show with your friends. You can follow the show at Timcast IRL. You can follow me personally at Timcast. Clint, do you want to shout anything out?
Shout out to Tower Gang, my homies. If you're tired of the D being shoved down your throat, make sure you subscribe to Tower Gang, where we'll do it for them. And then Liberty Lockdown, if you want to hear really radical, libertarian styled, Ron Paul style, Dave Smith styled rants, and follow me on Twitter at Liberty Lock Pod. Thank you so much for having me again, Tim.
There's no way to follow that up. I'm Hannah Cliff Brimlow. I'm a writer for Timcast.com. Go to Timcast.com, click on the read tab, see all the work from me, Adrian Norman, Chris Bertman, all of our journalists. They're excellent. You should definitely 110% follow at Timcast News on Twitter and Instagram. You can see all of our stuff. It's great. It's the best. If you want to follow me personally, you can follow me on Instagram at hannahclaire.b and on Twitter at HCBrimlow. Thank you so much.
Guys, if you'd like to follow me, you can follow me on Instagram and Twitter at Brett Dasovic on both of those platforms. Pop Culture Crisis has a special guest this week. Aiden Mattis is in town. He runs the Lore Lodge YouTube channel, which is a fantastic YouTube channel that everybody should check out. Me, him, and Phil are going to be doing shows all week with various guests. Mary will be back from vacation the week after that. Check us out all week. Thanks.
I am Serge.com on Twitter and Instagram. I think I'm joining you next week, is that right?
Yes.
Okay.
I've got the dates up there. I'm scheduled.
Okay, fantastic. And fun show. Always good to see you, Clint.
Hell yeah,
Appreciate
brother.
being here.
Yeah.
And
Serge.com. Follow him everywhere.
Yeah, see you guys.
Oh, real quick, I wanted to also mention I will be in New Jersey this weekend for Icarus Fest, IcarusFest.com. Incredible speak up of anti-war advocates. It's going to be fun.
Right on, everybody. We'll see you all over at Timcast.com. Thanks for hanging out.